Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Welcome to Ask a Brother podcast. I'm your host, Jeff St. James, and I'm going to give you all about a couple minutes to start to trickle in. So, shout out to everybody, y'all, that's kind of been hanging out with me over the last couple months in regards to kind of supporting the channel, supporting the cause, and just getting these types of interesting, thought provoking conversations out there for everybody. So, for starters, shout out to the 27,133 people as of today that are currently subscribers to this channel. Appreciate you all genuinely for joining me and joining me on this journey. Number two, men's group. We started it last week, last Tuesday, and we're going to be doing our second men's group this Tuesday. It's every single Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The links are in the channel bio description. So feel free to join if you can. It's very, very cheap in comparison to our individual group therapy and our consultations that some of you have already signed up for. And then number three, one of my big announcements that I've been wanting to say, as you all have known, or maybe some of you don't know, we recently just started our stores, our store. Like we have our merchandise, like hats like this. We have shirts, we have hoodies, we have the hats as well. And I believe we have mugs as well. And but best believe every month or so, we're going to be adding new memorabilia and interesting things as they, of course, pop up or we think of them. And we already have a list of other things that we haven't made live yet, but we will be making live in the very near future. If you watched the live, I believe with Taylor, I believe we announced 3 or even 4 people that were winners. All you all have to do is send me an email directly. And then once we confirm that it's you, you get to pick out whatever one item you want on the store. You are the most engaged people for the month of September. So feel free to let us know. We're super grateful for you all that's liking this content, sharing this content, supporting the cause, and we just appreciate it genuinely. So best believe the donations, we appreciate it, the feedback, good and bad, we appreciate it, and we just appreciate the general engagement overall. So last but not least, in terms of potential ongoing announcements, so to speak, for now, later this week on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing my next interview with Maggie, the substitute. Some of you may have come across her stuff on Instagram or on other social media platforms. I believe she went viral when she first went with Pearl a few years ago. I think it was like 2020, 2021. And she blew up ever since. And I was one of the lucky people to kind of convince her to come on to give me her perspective of traditionalism as it relates to women and becoming a wife and what her viewpoint is in an era and environment where that seems to be kind of the opposite. So, stay tuned for that. And that is Wednesday. So I'm going to play our video for our sponsor for today, which is from Do Sable City, which is a natural alternative for boosting testosterone and just helping men. So instead of going to all the other supplements that aren't as quite natural or aren't as quite healthy, for helping men to kind of get that male vitality back, getting your hormones up and rushing, and really being able to enjoy the sexual experience. This is just a company that, looking at their data, looking at their science, I'm totally fine with rocking with them. So check this out. And the link is, again, I believe it's pinned in this comment section. And then it's also available along with the other links on our channel bio as well. So we're going to get some few words from our sponsor, and then we're going to jump into today's video. All right, y'all. So again, shout out to our today's sponsor, Do Sable City Botanical Farms, for that awesome video and for that awesome message. So again, fellas, if you think that's something you may need some help or support with, feel free to click on the link. They have a special code, which I believe is Ask a Brother 10. and that is your discount code where you can get, I believe, 10% off of your any purchase that you make. So if you are in the chat right now, feel free to like the video. Make sure that you, if you can donate $2, $3 towards the channel if you can. If you're a member, don't feel obligated to donate anything because you're already supporting the channel already by default. And make sure y'all check out the store products. We got stuff for men, stuff for women as well. We're definitely going to be adding more stuff. And again, I really love the hats. I think it's a spin on the whole MAGA red hat phenomenon, and I think it's just something different. So feel free. And I think and ours has got the unique thing on the side as well. So just support if you can. And if you do buy it, or if you do start getting the stuff in the mail over the next week or so, feel free to take a picture of it or video and make sure you tag our channel as well. So we would greatly love to put a collage together of all the different customers and clients who have purchased these products. All right, y'all. Now for what y'all here for, because y'all not here for all these different announcements. So today's topic, red flags, the types of people to not date. Red flags, the types of people to not date. Now, before I jump into this and start giving my long soliloquy of what I think, and obviously many of you saw the thumbnail from Future to Ayesha to Jada to Nick Cannon. But before I get into all of that, I thought this would be a really great opportunity. And many of you have honestly asked and requested for this. So I'm going to bring in my special guest to kind of unpack these types of discussions with me today. And the incomparable, the guest who we just recently had, Miss Taylor Chandler. What's going on?
It's good to see you. I'm glad to be back.
Now, you see how I try to time that better this go around? So what's going on? How you doing? How you been?
I'm good. I'm great. It's definitely been a day. But I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. I appreciate you. As you saw, a lot of the feedback from the people in our comments was just asking for you to kind of come back. So initially, what did you think about our first time, doing our interview, and kind of how the convo went, and what's been the response on your end?
I thought it was really good, really positive, really balanced. I think a lot of people noticed that. I saw that a lot in the comments. We have really similar audiences in the sense of like similar values and goals. I think just like life goals and the way we kind of think things should go and what we think is healthy and stuff like that. So I think we have a lot of crossover in our audiences, which is really good. My clients follow your work and things like that. I know some of them are going to be tuning in tonight. So that's really positive. I think that honestly, I think people are kind of feeling some people are feeling a little bit more hopeful that we can make some progress together.
Okay.
I think that just being able to, so many people don't even see productive conversations happening between a Black woman and a Black man at this point. And so that in and of itself is really positive. So I felt really good. And these kind of conversations are really energizing for me. So even though, it's been a long day, like this really gives me a lot of energy to talk about this with someone who really gets it. So I could go on, but that's what I think. That's where I'm at with it.
Hey, I genuinely appreciate that feedback. I've heard very similar things. Now, I don't know with some of our callers today, as people start calling in, if they're going to feel the same way about many of the things we are, some of our viewpoints, which is fine. Because I'm totally comfortable with like hearing other people's perspectives and whether they think certain things that are done in the public eye are fine or not. So I definitely want to hear and put your feedback and your thoughts. So let me set the stage and then we'll kind of jump into it. All right. So I've been thinking about this particular topic for years now. Actually, well before the most recent situation with Ayesha Curry and her most recent interview on what was it? I forget, what was it? Daddy something.
Call Her Daddy with
Call Her Daddy podcast. Yeah, I listened to the whole thing, went through it a couple times just to make sure I got the gist of it. But I had been actually thinking about this for years. And I was trying to think, what would be, obviously there's a major split across the country, right? In terms of like the percentage of women who clearly think it's fine. There was no issues whatsoever. It was her right. It's how she feels. And then you had the the
Mhm.
minority, small percentage of men that agree with them, and then you got the overwhelming percentage of men that's on the other end, right? And you got the small percentage of women that kind of more align with men's perspectives on this. Now,
Mhm.
what could I point to that captured a really, really good picture of a pretty stark down the middle divide between like men and women, or just people in general, of like a huge divide where everybody has these different viewpoints and everybody sees it so radically different. Like, what could be the thing? And I realized it. I think it was 2015 viral phenomena of the dress. The debate whether it was the white and gold or
Oh,
the
yeah,
blue and
yeah, yeah.
black dress, and how depending on who you spoke to and how people were like looking at their phones and it was like, no, it's gold, it's white and gold, no, it's blue and black. How could you not see it like this, or how could you not see it like,
Yeah.
and just the like, it was insane to see so many people like so enthralled and like captured by that moment, but
Mm,
seeing that people saw it from diametrically different perspectives. I'm
mm,
not as super interested necessarily in the prescription, not necessarily prescription, whether or not one view versus another view on this is necessarily legitimate. I think that there's potentially legitimate concerns and viewpoints on both sides. My
mhm,
lens, as we kind of get through this discussion today, is actually that I think one view is probably going to be more ideal.
mhm.
And once we
Yeah.
kind of unpack and go through that, I'll probably expound, or even when some of our callers come in, I'll test that theory to see, which of the perspectives in terms of Aisha's behavior, Jada, and other different celebrities and commentators when what they're doing, particularly when they're in relationships or even outside of relationships, which one will probably be the most ideal for what
Mhm,
it is that the majority of people are typically looking for.
mhm.
So for starters, what did you originally think when all this stuff started trending and popping up with Aisha and the talk and what all the statements that was she making? What was going through your mind, and what were you seeing in term on your end as far as like social media and what people had to say about it?
Yeah, I was seeing one, I honestly do not look at a lot of celebrity news. I really don't. But there are some things we just cannot avoid. It's just going to be in the space. So
Hmm.
this was one of those things. And so the main things I saw were about her being ungrateful and disrespectful, right? Which
Mm,
is what I've been hearing. I actually have not looked into their relationship before. I mean, I only knew kind of the general narrative, like the general public opinion about it, and that was again, I noticed a divide. But what I was seeing this time was a lot of just the ungratefulness, the disrespect, or at least the perceived ungratefulness and disrespect. We'll get into all of that.
mhm,
Um, and I think people just being tired, like, you like just tired of hearing from Ayesha Curry and tired of seeing this. It seems like again and again, like when I first heard about Ayesha Curry and the Steph Curry stuff, which I don't even know when all of this even, I can't remember when this all started to even come up,
mhm.
but it seems like the same conversation every single time. Like it really doesn't seem like it's evolved at all. So it seems that what I've seen this time is people are just kind of tired of it. That's what I'm seeing.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, something some I feel like it's kind of similar on my end to some respect too. I'm getting better now that I'm doing podcasts and we're trying to pay attention more to this
Yeah.
type of stuff. A, because it's relevant, and B, because it does relate to our field as far as mental health, psychology,
Mhm.
different ways to it's actually very, very fascinating for me when I look heavily into like male and female evolutionary psychology models, and seeing, and it makes sense to me why both sexes generally, like the majority of both sexes, responded a certain way.
Mhm.
So that was interesting to say the least. So for starters, I've been thinking about it for a little bit, and trying to parse out like what would be a lot of really interesting red flags that you could identify in men, ones
Mhm.
that we could potentially identify in women, and then ones that we typically might see like in both sexes.
Mhm.
You could start with either, but which group would you like to start with in terms of like just general red flags?
Let's start with women.
Okay. All right. Oh, you just hitting the ground running. All right. All right. Well, from your lens, what's some red flags, especially in modernity and modern times that
Mhm.
men might need to be mindful of or be on the lookout for when it comes to red flags in women?
I'll just start with the big. Not it's not even an elephant in the room at this point. Like everybody sees it, and we're all talking about accountability. And I think that
Mm,
it's important to just name it. I'll name it first. I think that it just cannot be overlooked because so many things are attached to accountability. It's not just about apologies, although that is one manifestation of accountability. Accountability is related to someone's character. Like so it comes out in so many other ways. Someone who's accountable is also other things. So I think the lack of accountability, which again manifests in apologies, but is also it also shows up in other areas, is one of the biggest flags because accountability and responsibility are really two sides of the same coin. So when
hmm
someone lacks accountability, they are also irresponsible, and so that is going to we're going to see that in just about every we'll see in other areas of their life, not just like between you and her, but
hmm
also in other areas. So I think that's a big one.
Accountability. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a given without saying, and it's definitely been
Mhm,
the going talking point really since the manosphere has really become mainstream. I
mhm,
think with the discussions about red pill versus this pill versus that pill, that's been kind of like one of the most central talked about things amongst men in these
mhm,
spaces is like what it do women in general struggle with accountability when it comes to the relationships with men, but then two, what does female accountability look like, and does it even look exactly the same as men's? I
mhm.
wonder that. What do you think about that?
I think it does. It might not like you might not use the exact same language, but
Mhm,
I would even say that could be a stretch. I think accountability is in it's in your action.
mhm,
And so it's not just it's not like my bad or I'm sorry. There's a making up. There's a accounting for what it is that I've done. That's what I mean by making it up.
mhm,
Uh,
mhm,
there's a reform. There should be a reformation, like when someone has been accountable to something. So I really don't think that there is a difference. That it should look different. I want this light in front of me, but it's just not working for me. I don't really don't think there should be a difference. I think we should expect the same
Okay.
from both. I do think that is a really that there's a really clear difference in who is taking accountability, and I think men
Mm,
are definitely both challenged to be more accountable and literally are more accountable than women in general. Of
mm,
course, you know, we have the disclaimer is it's not all men are always accountable and not all women are irresponsible and not accountable, but there is,
mhm.
I think, definitely a difference. I see it in my practice. It's not just online, although
Yep.
we do see it online. But I definitely see it like in real time, whether I'm working with individuals, with women as like one on one,
Mhm, mhm.
or in couples. And that's not all of my female clients, but it's definitely much more prevalent when I'm working with women than with men.
Yeah, another one that I've thought of that's a red flag in women is, main character syndrome.
What do you mean by that?
Just this overwhelming desire of like wanting to be seen and felt as like almost the center of another person's universe. Where center of attention, just and then everything kind of has to revolve around their feelings, their
Mm,
wants, their desires. They don't, it's never a two-way street with how they're approaching relationships. They
mm,
they kind of see themselves as on a pedestal, and men that don't jump through hoops and kind of keep them there, they're not the men that they want to be with. They're
mm,
not the men that they like. They want to be. They're the ones that kind of refer to, for lack of a better example, like they're the ones that kind of refer to themselves as royalty. Like,
no, actually, like,
right. So it's a strange thing where like no kingdom, not born to a king, but constantly referencing themselves as a queen. I get the whole self affirmational component to it, but like they actually try to live it. Like they try to live that thing, and I've noticed that those who kind of, when women that walk around as like they have this main character syndrome thing, what I'm realizing is that they feel like being in a relationship with with her or doing life with her is her doing you a favor,
Mm, mm,
where it's like you should kiss the ground that she walks on. You should just be grateful that she's even in your life. Like she's doing you a favor. Like, and that's how she carries herself. So her lens of what she has to give, and she's always going to see it as like you're here and she's here
mm,
kind of thing. And it's gonna manifest in terms of the demands, it's gonna manifest in terms of the expectations. It's this constant need to it goes from the normal baseline of validating your partner, validating your girlfriend, validating your wife to like validation is kind of the central most important thing for her. It's not
mm.
anything else. And again, it's always one way. And she's almost never seeing it as something that you're pouring so much into me. I need to do the same for you kind of thing. So I'm
Yeah,
titling it main character syndrome. Some people may just label it as like narcissism, but what do you think?
yeah, yeah. I've been categorizing this as self-absorption.
Mm,
So just the essentially like an obsession with your internal worlds. So we're really going to be saying the same thing here. I would just call it self-absorption. Like,
mhm,
so being so focused on your feelings and my truth, my experience, that I have a narrow perspective, so a limited perspective, and not able to see the other side. So a self-absorbed person is also lacks empathy. And
yeah.
so if I am unable to relate to you, then I'm unable to have compassion for you. And so the idea of it being in service to you, and that alone is already going to be a triggering kind of word.
Mhm,
The idea of being like in service to you is not it's not possible. Like self-absorption does not facilitate service.
mhm,
So yeah, I see it as being really self-absorbed, and I think that's really has been nurtured uh, socially for a long time.
mhm. Related to that, I am the table.
So yeah.
Like, I would never personally word that question that way. I wouldn't even really ask that question per se, but I do think all men that are serious of thinking about the idea of wanting a woman to be in their life or seriously consider her as a long-term partner or even wife, that's a thought that crosses their mind, which is like, how would my life change? And what would she bring or add to my life
Mhm,
positively, right?
mhm,
So if and when women kind of are posed that question, or even just the idea of they have to bring anything to a relationship, if they're like offended by that, and again, I understand like they don't like the specific what do you bring to the table question, but I
mhm,
actually think it's more so the actual what that question is representing. And generally like their mindset is exactly what you said. It's so much about self, it's so much about what they can get, what they can extract. It's rarely if ever about what they can give.
mhm.
That's a huge red flag to me.
Yeah.
Do you have another example
Another example of self-absorption.
of red flags in women?
Oh, red flags. I mean, I think there's so let's see. I'm thinking right now about media. We touched on that last time we did this, like
Hmm.
who she's following online, what she's listening to. So I think there's media, and then sort of related to that is social. So like literally the social life, not social media. So what I'm basically getting at in this neighborhood is consumption. So what am I consuming? Like what's taking up my time? Who am I giving my time to?
Mm,
Whether that's literally in person, friends, and even family members. I mean, I think that's also really important. How does she manage familial relationships, especially when those relationships, if you can clearly see that there's some dysfunction there. Same thing, same goes for friendships. And then, yeah, what she is listening to, watching. I mean, I'm really big on that. Like, I think that everything that we listen to matters. So, I mean, that music, movies, all things in media. So, I think what paying attention to that is really important. So, when we're seeing more specifically, red flags would be, I mean, I think Cardi B's on the thumbnail, right? Like we're talking
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
right? Like so things around like that. In the entertainment industry, that whole uh, sexy red. I mean, if we're waking up listening to sexy red on the way to work, like what's really going on. So I think what she's listening to really matters.
Yeah, that's true. I'm one of those people who tries to have a balanced view with it, just because I know that we all have our varying forms of entertainment, whether it's comedy, whether it's certain shows. I look at it. I look at what they're allowing to influence them in terms of not just what I'm entertained by, but also what am I trying. How does it influence what I do, how I
Mhm.
move, how I treat the people or who the person who I'm in a relationship with? Like, am I listening to this because it's a bop every so often, like randomly, or is this something I'm trying to internalize and trying to actually like do
Yeah,
and exhibit in my actual relationship? So, obviously some people are more rigid about that. And it's like, I'm not going to listen, watch,
yeah.
but I feel like that's like 90% of what we can listen to or watch.
It's true.
So
I mean, I
yeah.
think that it definitely can be limiting. Now, I am much more rigid about this than most people.
Mhm,
I don't think that most people are as strict as
mhm,
I am around these things. So I think the principle of it is really important. Now, like I don't necessarily think people need to be, they don't need, no one needs to be like me, but the in my practice and how I manage media is pretty rigid.
mhm.
So I get, leaving some margin for that. I just, for me, media is so influential and it's such an unconscious, so many things going on in the unconscious, subconscious there that I
Mhm,
like to be really, really safe. I'm really safe with the brain. So I like to, for
mhm.
me, I keep things really, really, really clean for the most part. Um, and I think it can also, it can be a slippery slope. Like, how do you really gauge how much someone is internalizing the lyrics? Like, how do you
Yeah.
really, how do you gauge that? I mean, I think you can do your best to observe and, you make your best guess to try to discern. I think we hear a lot of people say it's just entertainment. I don't believe that everybody who says it's just entertainment is actually just being entertained.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think everybody has to, really know, like, their own convictions and have their own standards around that.
Yeah, like based off what you said, that's why I watch so much of what they do.
Mhm.
That's why I watch how they live. Just because I know, and I would even argue that let's take men for instance. When we were younger, when we were listening to hip hop, maybe we were a little bit more impressionable. You're 35, 40, 45, 50 years old. There isn't a whole lot of men that's trying to do a lot of what they're hearing in the songs anymore. Like that's and they can still listen to it, they work out to it, they're fine, but their actions aren't anywhere close to the lifestyle that maybe it was when they were in their 20s or teens. All right. So for me, I get it from both sides for sure. Uses astrology signs to justify their attitude and behaviors. What's your
Mhm.
thoughts about that? Because that for me, that's a huge. In fact, that's like probably top three. When I keep saying, "Well, I'm a Sagittarius," or "I'm a this," or "I'm a that," and again, they're not just claiming it in the sense of like I was born in a certain time frame. They're more so referencing it as a justification for their behaviors and or attitudes. That's a huge red flag to me. What you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be and often is a deflection. I think that, from what I've heard you say about astrology, I'm probably a little more rigid with I'm probably am more rigid with media. You're probably more rigid with astrology.
Oh yes, yeah,
Okay, so like
yeah.
I don't refer to like my astrological things. And also I think there's like a history in astrology where it's been a thing, like
Mhm,
in history and in different civilizations and things, and that can get pretty deep. So I don't totally like push it aside or invalidate it. At
mhm,
the same time, most people aren't talking about it from that level of like depth or understanding. I think that for the most part, I think that it's deflection away and prevents people from really introspecting into like, why do I do this? Not like, where was
mhm.
my planet? Where was Saturn when I was born? Like, like, no, why do you do this, Janet? Like, I don't wanna hear about what's going on in Venus or where
Yeah, yeah. Oh my
like,
gosh, like I remember, like I distinctly they're and you're right that I definitely am more anal about this because I view them as like the iPhone only people, where it almost sounds like cultish, where it's like, oh, if you were born at this time frame, I can't date you. It's like, oh, if you got an iPhone, if you don't got an iPhone, we can't be together because our bubble colors ain't gonna match. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
sorry, like it's just of all the nuanced things that we can easily point to extrapolate an understanding of why people are the way they are, why they do what they do, whether what we're doing is good or bad. Like all of that's in the same bucket to me. So that those are like
Yeah,
same
it's
bucket to me.
oversimplified. It oversimplifies
Yeah.
human behavior, and it's like fake deep for the most part, right? Like most people aren't doing historical, like in-depth extractions of knowledge of what the Egyptians were doing and all kinds of stuff. So,
Hmm.
um, I think for the most part, we're talking about astrology that's sort of like magazine astrology
Yep.
and
Yep.
like fortune cookie stuff, right? That's just oversimplified and lacks context and is often a deflection away from responsibility, even if someone's not intending to do that,
Hmm. Hmm.
because they're actually seeing it as something that's real and like a sort of like a North Star, and so are actually attributing their behaviors to their sun sign and such.
Yeah, yeah, and Big J in Dallas. Yes, I am a Samsung guy. It was a real big issue for a lot of women in the past that I would date or going, oh, when you going to switch over? And I was like, now I'm not going to switch over. Now I'm just not. Now I'm just not going to switch over, kind of thing. But this applies to both, but oftentimes I think it usually plays out a little bit differently, generally speaking. Financial irresponsibility.
Mhm,
Financial irresponsibility. I personally don't care how much a woman makes. I'm more interested in how much debt she has and how much and what it is that she prioritizes her spending needs to be on.
mhm,
The bigger of an issue that is, and the more that you ignore that early on, I just feel like that's just going to be one of the sticking points that's going to be throughout the course of a relationship. Is when you're not aligned with somebody in terms of financial discipline, in terms of goals, in terms of what we're investing, what we're working towards. This is the equivalent of like being in a ship or being in a small boat, and there's a hole, and you're actively trying to dump water out, and they're actively trying to create more holes. Like,
yeah, yeah,
it's like they're literally doing the opposite of what you need them to do in order for you to make progress. So financial irresponsibility
huge.
is like huge for me. What you think?
Yeah, and it's and money is consistently up there, like top 1 and 2 things of why people end up getting divorced, so it's a big deal, it's also something that, p most I'm not gonna say most,
Mhm.
I wanna say a lot of people have, struggled with having transparent conversations about.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't come from families where that was a common conversation, where financial literacy was like something that was explicitly discussed or
Mhm.
developed in the house. So people can have ideas around how they think money should be managed in their relationship. But I
Mhm.
think a lot of people struggle with actually bringing that into practice or like bringing that into conversation and then creating practice around it within their relationship. So I think there's a lot of ideas about money and not a lot of healthy practices going on with money in relationships. Right, finances are a really vulnerable topic for a lot of people.
Mhm.
It's a really, I think we could even use the word, it's an intimate topic. I mean, it's really personal
Yeah.
and
Personal.
it's historical, it's personal, it's emotional. Money and emotions really are hand in hand, really. So there's a lot tied to money. So it's a
Mhm.
really sensitive conversation. It's also a really significant conversation, so it's this fragile thing that needs to be discussed. And when it's
Yep.
not discussed or it's not managed, it creates really big problems. But because it's so sensitive and because so many people have so little experience with it, it's not being dealt with on the front end. So I think I'll say a lot of things about money, but I think you're right that financial responsibility is definitely a big red flag. I relate that to accountability and responsibility in general, but
Mhm.
it's definitely related to accountability. So yeah, that's huge.
Um, either trying to rush the relationship or rushing and jumping from relationship to relationship.
Mhm.
Just like a lack of, and I don't even know if I could put my words on it, but where it is, where it's like the lack of willingness to kind of learn many of the things we're talking about usually ends up happening to people who oftentimes, move too quickly into relationships because they actually didn't know the person, they only knew the representative.
Mhm.
So like rushing, just trying to rush the relationship. And even if they're in a relationship, they're constantly trying to rush us towards new milestones. And I'm like, if one person is being pushed, it's feeling like they're being pushed, that's
Mhm.
usually an indication that something's off in terms of like alignment.
I
It,
agree.
whereas if you have to push him to want to marry you, the issue isn't that y'all not married. The issue is that it appears you're desiring and feeling that you guys are ready for something that clearly he is not. And rather than dealing with that, you'll just say, well, either we get married or we're done. I'm like, well, there's usually something in between that kind of has to happen when you're trying to work with couples. But like rushing the relationship or like rushing and going from relationship to relationship very quickly,
Mhm.
those are signs of people to me that are more rooted in and focused on like the status or the title
Yeah.
versus like where we actually are and if it makes sense.
I totally agree. And I'm also curious to know what you think. And you're related. I'm
Mhm.
curious to know what you think about rotation dating. Isn't that what it's called? That's what it right? When so oh,
Oh,
roster dating.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Roster.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Tell me your thoughts first, and then I'll tell you my feedback.
Okay, on roster dating.
Yeah.
I'm I'm not for it. I don't advise it. I definitely understand the logic behind roster dating. I get the rationale.
Mm,
I'm definitely team intentional dating and just the energy and attention it requires to be intentionally dating someone. I mean,
mhm,
doing that with multiple people, it almost seems like those don't go hand in hand
mhm,
with like my idea and practice of what intentional dating is, meaning in dating for the specific intention to have a long-term partnership or marriage if that's what you're going for.
yeah,
So the idea of having several people that you're dating, whether you're a man or a woman, I'm really equal here. Um, whether you're a man or a woman, I don't see it. I think it's sort of like risk distribution. So that's kind of like the basic rationale behind it. It's just going to
mhm,
distribute the risk among multiple people so that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. So I think that it's a defensive posture to take, which that is
mm,
not does not facilitate vulnerability and openness.
okay.
So like the very things that help to build trust and intimacy on the front end, you're hedging. And so you're sort of
Mm,
you're in short kind of playing yourself. Like if what it, that's what you that is what it is that you want. You want this intimate, trusting, safe, secure relationship. But on the front end, you're pretty much saying, um, I don't think that's going to happen here. So I have
mhm.
to distribute the risk to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I think it sort of sabotages someone more often than not. And that's my opinion. I get the rationale, but
Mhm.
um, I think that there's a better way.
This person's second bullet says it's disgusting for women but necessary for men. Do you, what are your thoughts about with this statement? Do you think there's some merit to this, or do you think universally across the board it's not going to be optimal for either sex?
I don't think it's optimal for either. I think where that sort of comes from are ideas around like women and like a word that comes to mind is like imprinting and like these like things, you know what I mean? Like women making connections with other men is bad, but men making connections with other women is much less consequential. So
Mm,
I understand sort of like where that rationale comes from. And I think, like many things, I think you have to have your own convictions and standards around it, and
mhm,
that you should do what works for you and what you believe. Um, so I don't think that it's optimal for either. And if men want to do it, or if women want to do it, then
mhm,
I think you have to stand on your convictions and deal with whatever consequences, benefits, or negative consequences or benefits or detriments that come with it.
mhm. Yeah, I for sure think that it's extremely difficult nowadays to date, period.
Yeah.
I don't think I think the days of um I think the days of just, just kind of taking our time, one person at a time. Like I agree, taking your time is fine with any person you're dating or pursuing or getting into a relationship, potentially get into a relationship with. But the days of there's this endless supply of quality people,
Mhm.
quality men and women walking around that other people also want to marry, that everybody's complaining and stating the same thing. The numbers are not in our favor. So for men and women, it almost does make sense early on. I would say to actually cast their net beyond just one individual person. My lens is doing many of the things that you were suggesting upfront earlier on. You're not rushing into we started talking a week ago and now we're having sex. We're now moving in together a month later. Now we're because it's like each time you make one of these moves, it blurs your judgment from being more objective about what it is that you're actually seeing.
Mhm.
And like I said, if there's not a lot of men that a lot of women want, and there's not a lot of women that men are deeming as worth actually marrying. You, I mean, you can just do the whole. All right, I asked this one person out. I want to go out with them and see how it goes, and we go from there. After about 3 dates, after a month, maybe 2, 3 months, you realize it's not a good fit. Well, that's 3 months of your life that you don't get back. Whereas if there was 2 or 3 ladies and you weren't approaching them necessarily sexually and you weren't moving in with them and you weren't crossing too many lines of boundaries, it was a lot more conversational in nature, a lot more just observation to see, do they ever text back? How responsive are they? Just
Mhm.
doing that with 2 or 3 ladies simultaneously, that kind of lets you know who you can start to zero in now on more. And it only takes you 2 or 3 months of doing that. As an example, with my wife, when we first met, it was off of a dating app where obviously, we were obviously on a dating app and we were obviously being approached or pursued by multiple people simultaneously. But soon after we met and soon after we start talking, it made logical sense for those to kind of fall off. But if I had been going one person at a time, when I'm focused on one person at that time, I'm not on the dating apps then. That's the dating apps are uninstalled. I'm not on them at all. I'm just focusing on that person. I'll be honest with you. I would not have met my wife if I had tried to approach. This isn't to me. This isn't like the early 90s or 1980s or 1950s where you know, even most people are now meeting each other online. A lot of people are meeting each other online. So I kind of, I have obviously differing views than you with that, but I understand your logic behind it.
Yeah, I think that it's not like it's this terrible thing, and it's also not like this silver bullet. It's not like the
Mhm,
answer. But I think it's the way that for like most things, I think I'm pretty reasonable and balanced. Like I think with most things, it's the way that you manage the thing
mhm,
that makes it work for you or not. Um, I can be in my own like personal practice, not my like professional practice, but I mean like literally my life in my own life. I'm pretty like rigid and rigid meaning like disciplined and
mhm,
and pretty like firm in keeping things like orderly and clean. And I like sanity and
mhm.
so I like to keep things nice and clear. And I think that doesn't work for everybody. That's not for everybody. But it worked for me.
Yeah, yeah. Nah, and like you said, sometimes those situations work for people like you. Obviously, situations work for people like me.
Mhm.
I'm in the camp of like, how much are you sharing and how much are you giving if you're going to do this, where you're trying to get to know
Yeah.
or go out on dates with multiple people. Because my lens is it's no different than how much you're trying to give up early on with one person. If you're rushing things, if you're ignoring red flags, whether it's one person or 3 people, you're kind of doing the same thing. So my
Mhm.
lenses is like, what is it that you're attempting to learn and observe? And are you being more too like reactionary, or are you actually being more methodical and allowing what you're actually seeing to actually take root in what you're observe, how you're choosing to judge, like whether or not this is a potentially long-term option.
Yeah.
right?
In all of in that, I hear just being really intentional with what it is that you're doing, really, and really
Mhm.
uh, taking account of your interactions with the person. We're not just going on dates, more with multiple dates with different people, but going on that for the purpose of getting information and then applying reason to the information that you have, not just spending time.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
the management of how you're going to go about that, it really, really matters.
Nah, I agree. I think it makes sense. So we're gonna, excuse me, bring in a couple callers and just see how it goes and with their questions, feedback, or whether they tell us they hate us. We're gonna bring a couple folks on to see what they think. All right. So for starters, let's see who I got. Ba, 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 ba. Good sir, Derek. How are you? Can you unmute your mic?
Yes.
What's going on, sir? Welcome to the show. How can we help you?
Appreciate the content. And are you all able to hear me?
Yep.
So I'm a gospel preacher who has a 23-year-old daughter, and I'm trying to instruct her about, this dating game that's out here. One of the things that I'm trying to teach her how to do in her interaction with men, especially in the church, is how to rap, how to bring respect, appreciation, and peace to the relationship. Um, what other pointers can you give me to pass on to her as she moves through this dating realm? And
And just for clarity, how old did you say she was?
she's 23.
23.
Yeah.
Taylor, what's your thoughts?
She's 23. She's dating. You said that you shared with her, you're sharing with her about respect, appreciation, and peace. I'm curious to know, I want to know your definitions of this. Like what does that mean in practice to you? Or like, I want to know what you're already doing. What is that in practice to bring respect, to bring appreciation, and to bring peace?
To respect a man's role in a relationship, to respect the fact that he is taking his time out to take you out and to show you a side of himself that perhaps he's not showing to other people because he's interested in you. Appreciation, whether you guys go out to IHOP or Ruth Chris, listen, it's very plain and very clear that I'm not roster dating so I can get free food and free trips.
Mm-hmm.
You're interested in me, I'm interested in you, and so I'm willing to show appreciation for you spending not only your money but your time as well, and also to bring peace. Um, Perhaps you guys disagree over something, and don't have a chip on your shoulder and try to win an argument, but just conversate through the entire thing. Or he's going through something, and you say, "Hey, listen, come over to the house, home cooked meal. We can chill out, and we can try to help you mellow out, and perhaps take a step back and look at the situation uh, in a wider lens to help you deal with whatever's coming your way."
I think that a lot of men would be really happy to date your daughter.
Yeah. Seriously.
It's a really, really comprehensive advice and practical. So I appreciate you sharing that. I think
Now, I'm trying to teach her that. She's not doing all of that. I'm trying to
okay.
Mhm.
pass that on. I want to make that clear.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good vision. It's a good vision for how to show up in a relationship. So I
Okay.
really appreciate that. How about what she should expect? What are your conversations around that? What she should
Yeah.
expect? What she should be getting? How would she
Uh,
know the right guy?
Someone who is someone who loves the Lord,
Mhm.
but also someone who's not going to look at her like a notch on the belt, or look at her as someone that's not going to objectify her, but would respect her role as a woman, potentially as a wife, um, and that's what she would look for. Not looking for any expectations. You got to be making six figures. You got to be 6 feet tall, and you got to have a six pack. None of that. None of that foolishness. But just, well, I put it this way. What I'm trying to teach her is, when you are in that realm and you're looking for someone to start, you want to make sure that this man has his own place, has a job, and of course has a relationship with the Lord. Doesn't matter what kind of job he has one. He has a place, his own place. He's not staying in his mom or grandma's basement, but that he also has a relationship with the Lord. And those are the kind of things I'm trying to school her to look for, and just to start from there. Just very
That's
basic.
Good. And yeah, I think I would even say it's beyond, it's levels above basic. So I think that's really good. I would add, and then curious to know what Jeff thinks. I think something that I find it comes up later in people's marriages, or even this relation, even just in relationships and dating, when needs go unmet, breakdowns happen. And sometimes someone hasn't reflected enough on what it is that they need, like who I am and what I need, even apart from this relationship. Just as an individual, I have individual needs and I also have relational needs. And for her to get clear on those things, even before there's someone there that's trying to meet those needs, is really helpful. Mm-hmm. Because what she'll experience is frustration or anger or something, and if she doesn't know where it's coming from, it can be projected onto the other person, because I don't know what it is that I need, and so then I cannot articulate, I cannot communicate that to you, and now we have a breakdown, and I don't know how to meet my need because I don't really know what the need is, and you definitely can't meet my need because how do you know what it is if I'm not able to tell you? That's where we get into that mind reading issue. Mm-hmm. So I think that could be a really good next level to reflect on what it is that she needs. I think specifically, even more specifically, emotional needs. So like respect, appreciation, and peace are all on my emotional needs list that I talk to with clients about regularly. And so even just, you can Google like emotional needs list or something. And what I have clients do, like just something so basic, I think I've talked about it on podcasts, so I just have everybody doing it if they want. Like, it's really simple. Just look at a list and see what stands out to you, what naturally resonates, because sometimes that's just speaking to what's just there. Like, rather than trying to assume I have a need for appreciation, maybe there's something else that really stands out to me. Like, I have a need for expression, and when and just seeing what resonates, and how do I like to have that need met? What does that look like in practice for me to meet that need? And then for her to be able to know, how would I meet that need all on my own, rather than expecting that, okay, I have these needs and I'll meet the person who will do it for me. Okay. So I'll wrap my point there. I think that could be a good place to go next.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor, for that. So I have a couple of thoughts having listened to both of you. And the first is actually about the discussion pertaining to religion. Now, obviously, everybody would love to be end up in a scenario and situation where we have, similar, even identical viewpoints as it relates to faith, religion. That's the ideal. The reality is churches are filled with the pastor, a couple of deacons, and nothing but women, the rest of the women in the church. Mm-hmm. That's the reality for westernized countries, unfortunately. That's just what it is. And if you go to Europe, it's even worse. So the odds and chances of a market where most women her age, a little younger, definitely older, can't find men that are religious, go to church, you name it. That's just the reality of that's going to more than like that's. I would say there's probably 80% chance. There's going to be a 20% chance that she's going to find a guy, and God forbid if you actually start focusing on denominations as well. So if you Baptist or Pentecostal or this or that, by the time you get down to he's Christian, he goes to church on Saturday or Sunday, he got saved this way versus that way, was he baptized or not? If she wants him to be black as well, and if she wants him to make a certain amount of money as well, like what I'm basically going to say is like, that may be the most ideal, but if I'm being a pragmatist, if I'm being honest about the reality of the environment and market, if that's a non-negotiable for her, she may potentially end up with a man that she doesn't really like, doesn't really want. Other women in the church or religious community also didn't like. She could get lucky. But typically guys that are attractive, checking off all these boxes, they don't typically make it in church religious spaces single very long, because there's usually like an influx of women in the church who they're the mothers of the church, the women of the church, like everybody, because when a guy walks in the church and he's got his stuff together and he's single for a very long period of time, the question usually starts to be not whether or not he is usually about, is he interested in men then? Like, because
it's a question mark.
Yeah, like if he dresses well, if he carries himself well, if he's faithful and also the stuff, it's possible that he's so religious that he just has extremely high standards about the caliber of woman that he's willing to date or pursue or even marry. That's possible. But again, most of those guys, like, they tend to get out very early. They get out at the age that she is now. If I'm being frank and honest with you. So I do say that is something that she and all women are going to have to think about seriously. It's not to say that it's not important. It's just to say the numbers aren't in their favor for everybody that thinks that's what they're going to get on the other side.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. This is real talk, and this is what I try to do with my daughter. Don't want to sugarcoat things. Just, hey, you need to know this, and I need to explain this to you and tell this to you so that it's not a surprise when you run into situation X or situation Y. I know you got to run, Jeff. I appreciate it. Taylor, we're going to be checking your content out. I really appreciate you guys' time. Jeff, I'm learning a lot. Keep it coming, man. I really appreciate your channel and your space. And you need to come out with another T-shirt. Protect Jeff St. James at all costs.
You know what? Chat, somebody write that down. Mod, make sure y'all write that down. Protect Jeff James at all costs. I appreciate that, bro.
Yeah, that's free. That's free. Take care now.
Bye there.
All righty. That's funny. That's interesting. And it's tough, I think, for parents, even for their adult children. I think it's a legitimate thing that we have to grapple with, is that the environment of what they're having to prepare and try to push their children or teenager or adult children into, it's not the same as what it was when he was growing up.
Yeah.
It's way more adversarial. It's way more questioning in terms of transactional motives or sex only related motives. Like it like shame is completely missing from our space as far as like our community and like modern times for the most part. So functionally, like it's definitely like you're just trying to avoid a bunch of landmines as much as possible.
Yes, it's looking real tough out there. But I think you brought up a really good point about the likelihood of finding a man in the church who is finding a man who is specifically Christian and who has all of these qualities. So there's definitely, I think that's just I won't repeat everything that you said, but I think that is just definitely something for people to consider. There's definitely just a religious, there's just a lot going on with religion right now. There's a lot of movement going on right now. There's a lot of reordering around religion, rethinking about religion. And so, yeah, with the old standard was of being, just being Christian and God-fearing, it's packaged, or being God-fearing is packaged very differently than it has been in the past.
Yeah, it is in many respects. And even then, just because they're in the church, just because they said the right things, just because they went through the same rituals, doesn't mean it guarantees you anything. My previous ex grew up in the church, as did I, and that went horribly, right? And honestly, the way in which people in the church reacted and responded to both of us, it wasn't what you would have hoped, ideally, like it would have been. So for a lot of people as religion and faith, and I will say that I think a lot of people are decentralizing their viewpoint of religion in contrast to their view or whatever that means or looks like of their concept of God.
Yeah.
So at this point, like, yeah, it's true. If that's number 1, 2, or 3 on your list, have at it with trying to reach that. But it's like, if you don't go, I'm gonna be honest with you, if you don't live in a predominantly Jewish or Islamic environment, where that's kind of still the norm in terms of religious, like the religion is still heavy in the culture, you're kind of you're just rolling dice at that point. I don't think that the odds are. You see it where women are going year after year in these churches, and they don't have much to show for it in terms of actual relational outcomes, especially in the very church or community that they're a part of. You know?
Unfortunately, true.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to bring on another person, and then we're going to jump into red flags with men, and then we'll jump into what I really want to jump into is just my conceptualization, and then I want to play off of you of like what's the general thing of why it is that so many people are like reacting to the Ayesha Currys, Jada Pinkett's, this person, that person, and like what to make of how it is that people are seeing it. Is it possible that both ways of viewing it are legitimate, but like I said earlier, but that potentially there could be a more there's a particular viewpoint that's just more that's maybe more ideal, a much more that could lead to much more like a likely outcome of what it is that most people are generally looking for, or does both sides like equally relevant, equally important, and it doesn't really matter on either end. All right, so let's see, who else can I bring on? How about Adam? Hey, can you unmute your mic?
Oh, there it goes. How's it going, gang?
What's going on, man? Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Definitely.
How can we help?
What's that?
I said, how can we help you?
Oh, no, just yeah, definitely not prepared for this, but I just want to say thank you guys for all your, time and energy and effort and material and all the good stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to say hello, and I maybe not so much the help part, but just an agreement with a lot that you guys are saying. I come from, I'm about to be 48, and I never thought I'd be single for this long, and not have a family yet. But yeah, I mean, I think my dating started was like meeting women on Craigslist. Then it kind of shifted over to like the apps, the Tinders, the OkCupid. Now it's just to the point where there's even the whole culture of being reported for no reason, and just getting banned from all these apps for no reason. There's nobody even contact or something. You're out, So the avenues of meeting people now, it's almost worse approaching people in person now because of the experiences that they're having, online. So yeah, it's just, there's a lot to add to that, but yeah, it's really refreshing to see what you guys are doing and what's going on in the world of dating. I've been really kind of immersed into this whole thing for about 11 years now. So when I caught on to you, Jeff, I think it was like probably the same day you came out. I think it was July 3rd, was it?
Yes. Well, I've been out longer, but
Right.
Stuff started going viral July 3rd.
Right. So yeah, I think I might have seen it before that, but yeah, I even exchanged with you on Instagram. But yeah, I just want to say thank you and maybe even like try to add value. And it's kind of interesting that the gentleman before, I forgot his name, but speaking of like faith and environment, I'm most like yeah, I had something that that I wrote maybe about 10 years ago, and I call it the foundation. And the first F, it's called the F's as well. It's faith, right?
Mhm.
So in the parentheses, it's like how you were mentioning is that even in the commonality of faith, it's like how do you just because you have that commonality, it doesn't mean anything until you really dig into the person's true character and their intentions, and that's where where you discover a lot. The second one is fitness, and that's mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. So the parentheses. The third one is family, and parentheses, friends and community. The fourth one is finances, and the fifth one is future. So how you navigate yourself, how you think of living your life now, and if you have faith and there's a hereafter, like what are you planning for your death, if you will.
Yeah.
So but yeah,
I
I just kind of
appreciate
want to
that,
add
man.
that, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
that for sure. And I thank you for the feedback. Yeah, it's a thing where it's tough out here for sure. And I think a lot of people are going to have to reevaluate after they reach certain milestones and reach certain milestones and certain points, whether or not the traditional family is really the end goal, or can they get a hybrid of that, whether or not marriage is just off the table and they just want companionship. These are all legitimate discussions that I think a lot more
Right.
people over the next decade are going to have to evaluate. Just one, I really hope you don't keep getting banned or kicked off of dating apps. I don't know that I've even heard that before. That I don't know what you doing
I mean,
or what you
it's
saying, but I'm gonna tell you
I
this,
can
man. Hold on,
I could
hold on.
warn a couple.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
tell you this. Whatever it is that you're doing, do the opposite. Do the opposite, because whatever's happening, just do the opposite of whatever's going on, man. But you said that you've been on Craigslist, you've been on OK Cupid. What else you been on?
I think we lost them.
I think we did too.
Yeah,
Um,
that might be good. That might be good. It's just,
yeah.
but I hope that I wanted to know though what he was doing on that.
Yeah,
I wanted to know what was going on the app. I don't know. He might get your channel in trouble. It might be for the best.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, what are you doing on a dating app that you're getting banned multiple times on dating apps? And I was like, do you know how? I feel like you gotta know how hard it is probably to get banned from a dating app. It's got to be multiple complaints. It's usually not one. So that's
Here's
interesting.
a pattern that we have not uncovered yet. I
Yeah.
hope he comes back and gives. Well, maybe not, but I think you might need some introspection. So, what was his name? Adam. I hope when you see this, it might not be this one, but this might be a situation where it might not be the women out there.
Yeah,
It might be something, Adam, that you're doing.
Yeah, something going on. Something going on. That's I don't know. It's just that's definitely something that I wish we could have heard more information on that. Like I want so real quick, red flags in men. Obviously, I don't want people to assume that I got all this smoke for the ladies and I got nothing to say for or towards men. Is there any particular unique red flags with men that you think women should be made aware of?
Honestly, and please tell me if I'm too balanced. Am I too balanced and too fair? Because I honestly think that the red flags in women are red flags in men. Like I see a lot of similar. I mean, there's a lot of
They'll happen with both sexes.
Yeah,
For sure.
there's.
I don't find too many men who walk around with the main character syndrome. I don't see that necessarily as much or as often. I will acknowledge that with the manosphere, there's definitely been an uptick of men who kind of are starting to quote unquote identify as like alpha this or that, like, but in all actuality, like I view men like that start to get to that point as more like emotionally abusive, where like really, and it's kind of connected, men that attempt to make the women in their life feel bad about herself in comparison to like other women, or like trying to get her to be jealous. Obviously women try to get men jealous as well too, but that's a very noticeable trait with men that I think is something that women actually need to run clear from is when he kind of goes out of his way to constantly make it known that you don't measure up to the other women he's been with in the past, the other women that's in his life that he could potentially have access to. Even if it's true, I don't see a single positive reason for why a guy would like go out of his way to like try to quote unquote humble her or keep her feeling so crappy about herself. It's just guys that kind of go out of their way. That is actual although people tend to use insecure a lot, that's actually a legitimate example of what insecurity will look like and flesh out. And the men that do that, it's just not surprising if they end up starting to look more emotionally abusive, physically abusive, because those kind of come hand in hand. Where the initial part of that is, I want her to have a lower view of herself than she needs to, but the view that I want her to hold is one that she feels like she has little to no value in my life or for any other man in general. So he said, even if you left me, ain't no other man gonna want you. Like that type of stuff, I think is a huge red flag that sometimes I think can be confused with like being like machismo and being an alpha. Like sometimes you're just being a dick. And that's like a really obvious one for me that I've noticed. Now, substance use or substance abuse, obviously that pertains to both sexes as well. If he cheats with you on another woman and then he becomes single, that doesn't mean that he's now a great candidate for her. And it's the same. And again, like you said before, it's the same is true for if she's willing to cheat on the man she's with to be with you. Why would you think that like, oh, well, she won't do it to me or he won't do it to me? Obviously, like, obviously that's a huge red flag. And for whatever reason, people will up and leave the relationships that they do have, or they'll wait patiently to get in a relationship with the person who is willing to actually act on and do that. That's shocking that the amount of ladies that tend to still do that, where they know he's got, he's doing all this stuff on the side. She's the what do they call the side chick, and then before you know it, when it's her turn to be in the new role, she's shocked when he has another side chick. Like, why would you be shocked by that? What you think about that?
I think that we really, honestly, I think we see it on both sides. I think that we see men who are also, there's of course men who are willing to deal with and date women who want to be the man who she's different for. So that happens too. I think even when I think about the machismo example that you just mentioned, honestly, when I juxtapose it with the main character energy in women, it's really similar. I think we're talking about, like, honestly, I think when we're talking about these red flags with men and women, we're talking about character issues that manifest in gendered ways. That I think we really, like, at the root, at like the seed of the red flag, I think it's like the same seed. If you want to, I mean, you could, some people are going to take it really into the spiritual and call it, this is like a spiritual thing. It's a spirit of something. I'm talking about like kind of the same kind of idea. The essence of the thing, I think we see in men and women, and it's just socially constructed in a way where it shows up differently in men than it does in women.
I agree with that.
So I definitely think that if someone is willing to do something with someone else with you, then you should never think that you're going to be the exception.
Yeah.
I think that there's two red flags that would be flags with a man or a woman, but I think women are especially reactive to with men. I'll say three.
Okay.
Again, it's an issue with women as well, but it seems to be in like a heterosexual relationship and in a more traditional relationship. I would say these few, and I'm sure I could name more, seem to especially throw off the dynamic. One is an emotionally dysregulated man. The other is, and this is related, is a short term, is a man who is impulsive, so short-term gratification, which I think is also is related to emotionally dysregulated. It's not the same thing, but it can't. There's some relationship to that. So emotionally dysregulated, impulsive slash like a short, someone who is more short-term, has a short-term gratification for like mindset or way of being than long-term. And someone and a man who regularly has excuses or blames others for his actions or outcomes. So essentially, we're talking about a man who lacks accountability. So and it manifests in like excuses or blaming others for what's really his own. So those are some that I think are like that I think I notice especially throw heterosexual dynamics off when men show up in those ways. Women it's an issue, but there's a particular like flavor that brings to relationships that's problematic when men do it.
This is a good one from What a Man. If he never takes you out in public, ding, 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 ding. Like, if he never wants to see you on the holiday, sis, that's probably a red flag.
Yeah, only calling you at certain times of the nights.
Yeah, this is like, in my world, this is super obvious, but like in hindsight, when emotion is involved, like red flags become pink flags become green. So, you know, it definitely makes sense for sure. That's actually really, and I didn't write that one down, but that's actually a really, really good one. And then, as you mentioned, a lot of this stuff is pretty much in general. So there was some things that I had wrote down about like what you mentioned earlier. Red flags in general, misaligned goals pertaining to family, family planning, marriage, whether we should get married. Like, as an example, like I know of women who have given 5, 8, 10 plus years to guys and they never got married. And my initial lenses is like, well, what happened between your vision that you would get married and then how much time went past and not that not actually happening and how you ended up giving so much more time. That's a huge red flag. Expectations. If we have misaligned expectations, if and this is a big one that I think men and women can do a much better job of earlier is when they barely or ever or almost never initiate text or phone calls. Or any type of form of communication. It's always kind of focused on one person doing it all, always carrying the heavy labor with that. That usually indicates one party is way more invested and interested than the other party. And potentially the person who's not saying anything, not responding, taking forever to do it, they're potentially looking at it through the lens of you're here and I'm here. So that's really, really important where it's like, if you're ladies, this is included, that game of like, I got to make him wait, or, you know, we got to wait it. Just know that like the guy who has legitimate options, he in his mind, you're not that serious. You're not that interested because every guy, well, not every guy, but a lot of men know what it's like to be with a woman who genuinely likes them. She wants to be on the phone. She wants to be in your skin. She wants to be around you. She wants to figure out what's going on with you, what's happening for your day. So when she's not really interested in any of that, and it's been, you know, a few dates now, a couple 2-3 weeks now, and it's not really going anywhere, at least right now, I would personally kind of pull back from that. I also had equate good and healthy relationship if they equate a relationship being good and healthy if they get their way. Where that's a big thing where it's like nothing is fine unless it goes the way I want or the way I believe things should go, right? Relationship is about compromise to a degree. It's about both parties acknowledging and feeling heard, seen. Now we'll speak when it comes to Ayesha and these others about the context of what needs to be heard and what needs to be seen. And then last but not least, and we'll allude to this briefly, what it is that they're willing to elevate above their spouse, their partner, their boyfriend, their girlfriend, and or relationship or marriage or family in general, I think is extremely important. Because the more things that are above those things I just listed, the more issues you're going to have as the relationship continues. The less things that you have that supersedes or is above your husband, your wife, your
Mhm.
girlfriend, your partner, your family, your children, your marriage, the better outcome you're probably much more likely to have. So those are some of the ones that I've been,
Very good.
some of the ones I've been kind of, and listening to you, I kind of took some notes in previous videos, whatever. So these celebrities, the chaos, all the stuff going on, right? From
Mhm.
Ayesha Curry to Jada. Who else we got?
I
Future.
haven't heard from Jada. I was, I'm
All
like
just
you, I'm
lumped,
trying to
listen,
get more into the celebrity
I
stuff.
just
Kinda,
I just lumped them all in together.
yeah.
Because over let's say the last 5 to 8, 10 years, each of these individuals who I've kind of listed, I've noted things that they've done publicly, and oftentimes like the split between how men tended to see it, how women tended to see it. And remember, like what I said earlier about that dress analogy, where it's like one set of people is like it's white and gold, and the
Mhm.
other set's like no, it's black and blue, and people are entrenched in their viewpoints of how to see the situation. So with the what was the daddy podcast thing that she was on again?
Call her daddy.
Call her daddy, right? Listen to it all the way through. Obviously there's people that had a whole bunch of different views or opinions on it.
Mhm.
uh my initial lens when I think about Ayesha and women like her that do they make these type of statements pertaining to private matters and things happening into their relationship, I realized kind of observing and watching the actual public responses between both camps of what I think was going on. I think that there is I think that it's two different mindsets that we're talking about here.
Okay.
And the first mindset I would kind of allude to is I think that there's a differentiation between men and women when it comes to people who are more single-minded and people who are more marriage-minded. And that actually doesn't matter what their actual relationship status is. So I think the initial issue is we're having these debates where there's people who typically more single-minded versus people who are a little bit more marriage-minded.
Mhm.
And I kind of wanted to parse out a little bit what I think is the difference and where they would end up on that spectrum when stuff like this happens.
Mhm.
So my initial thing is an individual that's probably more single-minded when it comes to what should be seen as kind of first. What should be seen as most important. A lot of the ladies, and the very, very small percentage of men, one of their big talking points, one of the things that they kind of got hooked on was like, it was her truth. It was her
Mhm.
feelings. Her
Mhm.
feelings, those are her feelings. That's her truth. It is valid.
Mhm.
My lens is that people who are more single-minded, that's the thing or things that are going to be at the top of the list of most important factors is their feelings,
Mhm.
their personal truth, the need to be heard, and the need to be validated anywhere and everywhere, no matter what.
Mhm.
People who are more marriage minded or family minded, whatever you want to list it as, they're going to see all those things, my truth, my feelings, whether or not I need to be heard and whether or not my feelings get validated. That is always going to be secondary
Mhm.
to their partner's feelings, to their children's feelings, to how their marriage and household looks, and to the name and legacy that they've taken on.
Mhm.
So just to clarify, one side sees the truth, the feelings, the need to be heard, the need to be validated. That supersedes who I'm married to, who I have kids with, whether or not I have kids, who will be infected, who will be impacted positively or negatively by this. That's all secondary to the need to be heard and the need to express it, period.
Mhm.
People who have the mindset that as long as it's somebody's truth And as long as it's how they really feel, they have a right to say it no matter what. Their lens is one of which they're going to think more myopically. They're going to think more selfishly. They're going to be more single-minded.
Mhm.
So whether you're a single person or whether you're a married person, whether you're a single man or a man in a relationship, if you're single-minded, you're going to do things oftentimes with the primary focus being, if this is how I feel, this is what I desire, this is what I want, I'm allowed to do it. Whereas people who have the other opposite, the other mindset, being more marriage minded, being more family focused, is actually going to factor those things in before they do that, before they do that act.
Yeah.
They will, between both sides, when I've seen the first side, she should be allowed to say it. She should be allowed to express it. That's her truth. I don't see anything wrong with it. My lens with it is this. I think that, and I'm going to go through some scriptures as well at some point. It's going to play. In fact, I'm going to go to the scriptures now. It's going to play out more and more why I think how you can tell the difference of the type of woman you have or the type of woman you are and the type of man you have and the type of man you are when you actually listen to these verses and then parse out what's the distinguishing things that the writer of Proverbs or Proverbs or some of these other books, what's the distinguishing factors that they're pointing to show one type of woman versus a different type of woman.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one, pretty obvious for one, people who have kind of heard it before. Proverbs 21:19. Better to live in a desert than with a quarrelsome and nagging wife. Now, wait a minute. Better to live in a desert than to live with and be with a quarrelsome and nagging some wife.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my lens is this is a simple question. Unless we believe all of this is just physical abuse, is that what it means to be quarrelsome? Or does it require, or is the writer stating that part of the potentially the quarrelsome and nagging wife is not simply what she's physically doing, but also what's coming out her mouth?
Mm-hmm.
So apparently, that's one. Next verse, Proverbs 14:1. The wise woman builds her house, but a foolish woman tears it down with her own hands. So obviously, we're speaking more metaphorically, but you get the point. Is what she's doing and what she's saying something that's uplifting and building the home, building the family, building the marriage? Or is what she's doing and what she's saying ripping it down?
Mm-hmm.
So in the case in point with Ayesha or Jada or any of these other people, if they're actively in a relationship and they're bringing attention to the relationship and what they were saying were things referencing the relationship, and overwhelmingly, it doesn't lead to people believing that it was positive. Perhaps there's a different philosophical viewpoint as to why it is that some people may feel there may be some issues with what it is that she did.
Mm-hmm.
Proverbs 12:4. An excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who brings shame is as rottenness in his bones. Proverbs 27:15-6. A quarrelsome wife is like the dripping of a leaking roof in a rainstorm. Restraining her is like restraining the wind and grasping oil with his hand. Proverbs 11:22. Like gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman who shows no discretion. And discretion, for those who need to look it up, I actually have it right here. It is the quality of behaving or speaking in such a way as to avoid causing offense or revealing private information. So my lens, when I listen to a lot of these passages and review a lot of these these particular verses and passages, is it's very, very, very clear that what a person can do and what a person can say can impact the household, the family, the marriage, the legacy. So it's very obvious that that's what the writer was alluding to. This is wisdom literature. You can find this in other texts. You can find this in other religious themes. You can just find this in philosophy in general. It's very clear that how a person moves and what they can say can impact not only themselves, but also how the people that they're connected to can be seen. And it's such a big issue that apparently it's worth living in a desert or not being in a home with her, and that she can be a crown or she could be the very thing that kind of makes you look like a fool. It's kind of what's coming out of her mouth. So when we get back to that spectrum that I kind of put out there, I think one way to view it is people who understand these passages, people who understand what this looks like, is going to see the actions and behaviors of many of the people we're referencing and talking about totally differently than people who are going to struggle with what it is that distinguishes when a woman or a man opens his mouth and talks and references his family and or his significant other. They're going to see these as totally different things. What you think?
Yeah, I mean, what I hear you saying, one of the things that makes this distinction, one of the markers of this distinction between the single-minded and the marriage-minded, is that the marriage-minded are rooted in a foundation that doesn't change, where the single-minded person doesn't have an unchanging foundation. And so it depends, and you can't trust. You cannot trust someone where it depends, like what you don't know how they're going to show up because it depends on how they feel or what they want to do that day or that hour. That's not a reliable person. That's not a dependable person. It's not a trustworthy person. So that's something that really stands out to me as a marker of that distinction. And I agree, there is definitely, we're seeing that those people, everybody's all mixed up online, which is, I think, just kind of annoying. It's just annoying, it's frustrating, but it's the internet, and I've learned to accept that I can't stop it, that I can't stop the fact that there are all of these people mixed up with different value systems speaking on the same topics, and it creates an air of confusion. So yeah, that's something I know that stands out to me in the distinction that you made. And then also a word that came up for me as you were sharing that is dignity. Like the marriage-minded people value dignity, like of the relationship, of themselves, of their spouse as well. And that means a lot of things, but one of the things that means is that there is a limit. And there's some people, single-minded people don't like limits, don't like stopping points. Like you just want to be unbound, and which means that you can be reckless if that's what you want to do that day, because a single-minded person, reckless doesn't really exist because there is no guardrail to measure it against. So it's like, what could be reckless if there's no limit? So I could speak a lot about that. I mean, I could talk a lot about that. But there's a stopping point that I think marriage-minded people have that says, I'm not going to go that far. There are things that are that deserve to be protected. There are things and people that deserve to be honored in this relationship. And I don't just freely give to the world what is supposed to be in the house.
The more I think about it, the more it kind of becomes more and more clear to me. I mean, we're going to bring on a couple more call-in guests to kind of see their feedback and see if they disagree with us and what their responses are. But I think that's what's actually going on, is that when we look at the dress analogy, it's kind of this, where people are looking at this as two radically different ways and frames of reference. And the person who's more marriage-minded, discretion is the guardrail that keeps them from going too far. Like you said, like if personal truth and personal feelings is all that's needed in order for you to be allowed to say anything, where's the discretion?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the protection? Right? So if she wasn't satisfied sexually with her partner, and she says that on a podcast, or any woman says that publicly particularly publicly on a podcast of this platform, something like this, if it's her truth, if it's how she really feels, who could criticize her based off of that mindset of everybody who's pushing this stuff? Where's the line?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you drawing arbitrary lines based off of just how you personally feel?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there a general standard of what it is that how we should move, or or what we should or shouldn't say in certain spaces? So one of the issues that I noted, and it's kind of alluding to what you mentioned about this struggle with the breakdown of if one side is saying where's the discretion and the other side is saying discretion not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no. My lens is, if you get with a man or woman that understands that everything that's happening in your relationship that's not positive, everybody doesn't have to know. That's one thing. But what I think is happening is the people that are on the left, or the people who are on the side of validate, listen, be heard no matter what, I wonder if I wonder how many of them would be comfortable if something similar was happening on the other end. My lens is that many of the people, especially the ladies, that are constantly jumping and coming to bat with and always defending a lot of these women celebrities and influencers who are saying and doing all of these acts and moves, when a man was to say something similar or comparable for the same exact reasons, something tells me that they would have totally different reactions and standards.
Mm-hmm.
If LeBron James, because he's not as happy, because he's feeling lonely, because of all these different reasons or justifications that he may personally have, if he was to say out loud that he wishes that he would have gotten more female attention, not because he was going to act on it, but just because it would be nice to feel it again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know almost any woman on the planet that's going to say that that's good. That's his truth and he's allowed to say it. And how many of the women that's saying it's fine in this context would be telling Savannah to take all she could from him and go where she's respected? What I'm realizing is this whole support, and this is what I'm about to describe this as, I think it's idolatry. Idolatry, for those who aren't as familiar with theological terms, is where you place something to the highest ideal, you give it a level of status where it can't be critiqued, it can't be scrutinized, it can't be challenged, and it's to be held up above anything and everything else. If a woman's feelings, if a woman's personal truth and her right to share it and say it is the highest ideal in the relationship, that is a form of idolatry. As an example, as a married man, my wife's happiness is not the most important thing to me. But guess what? Neither is my happiness as well. Her happiness and my happiness are very important things. The ability for what I do, how I show up, how I continue doing things, can the number one ideal to keep me doing that can't be based on happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Can't be based on my personal feelings. Can't be. People who don't believe that there should be any guardrails to what it is that they say, how they say it, because the number one most important ideal is just being allowed to say it no matter what. What if all the people that disagree with you all, it's just about the line of where we're drawing, of when it is that it becomes appropriate versus inappropriate?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know of let me take that back. There's definitely people on the internet that's like, she just needs to shut up. She just needs to be grateful. He's rich. She should just be appreciative. She has something. Feelings are feelings. Emotions are emotions, right?
Mhm.
I've heard very similar things before in counseling sessions, so this isn't necessarily unusual. The difference was is that it was in a counseling session.
Mhm.
People who are more marriage minded, it's not that they don't believe the truth needs to be shared or feelings don't need to be validated or acknowledged. They're recognizing, well, 600,000 people, probably not the best move. Therapist, great option. Mentor, great option. Close family member or friend, potentially good option. Anybody and everybody that wants to hear it, probably not.
Mhm.
Probably not. So that spectrum, that's just what I was initially kind of, thinking about. And I think that's actually what's going on. You have any more feedback
Mhm.
about that?
I think you're covering it really comprehensively.
Mm,
I think that I think just emphasize the concept of or practice of idolatry and what that means, prioritizing feelings above all things, above all else, above like even the truth or like reality
yeah.
itself. So I definitely can see how that has been that's been prevalent. I mean, whenever we started the whole my truth thing, I knew it was going down. That things started to get kind of weird. Okay, things started to get weird because y'all know it wasn't always like this. Things were not always like this the way it is right now. So I don't know what about year that was when that started to happen. I remember doing a podcast episode about my truth a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been I thought of it like a philosophical stance that someone has. Essentially, like someone either, and I'm not really like I'm not too much of like a binary person, meaning like an either or person. But when it comes to like philosophical stances, there is this it is sort of like someone either thinks this way or they don't. Someone's either you kind of look at it like we kind of have my truth people or people who are kind of like really adverse to that. And when those two people meet, it's like a powder keg. It's like these two people do not get along. Like I don't know how you said the single-minded and the marriage-minded.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like there are related dichotomies to that. Like the single-minded and the marriage-minded is also the my truth and the truth people.
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
also the
Yeah.
objective versus the subjective. It's also like
Mhm.
so there are these related like philosophical stances that show up in people that tend to be a certain way. You know, you said left recently. Okay, you said the people on the left, and I thought because it even shows up politically.
Yeah.
So there are these splits, and we're only becoming like more and more polarized in these splits. And so when these two people, let's just keep it on the my truth versus the truth people,
Mhm.
in other words, like the objective and the subjective people, when these two people try to have conversation, it's like it almost seems impossible because we're viewing the world through very different lenses. And so what we think is reasonable, and again, this whole us versus them thing, I mean, it seems so polarized, right? Like they think it's unreasonable. And so it's really difficult to come to resolve when you have these really polarized, these really different philosophical ways of looking at the world.
Yeah. I that's it. I'm glad you actually added to that about the objective truth versus subjective truth, where it's like subjective truth people, how a person feels is seen as the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
That's seen as the highest ideal, right? And that's the thing that needs to be validated. Whereas this, as an example, like if anybody that's in any relationship isn't happy 24/7, there's times where they dislike their partner, they dislike their husband, they dislike their girlfriend, they dislike their wife, right? And then there's times when they hate them. I'm so tired of him. I'm so tired of her. And what I've noted is those feelings may be legitimate. There may be a legitimate reason for why you feel that way. The difference between the both camps is one party will say that's a valid feeling and you're allowed to express it. The other party would say, let's say those to the right would say, that's a valid opinion. You have a right to express it, but there's a time and a place and with whom it is that you should be expressing it with. That's the difference. One side, one camp, when we're looking at the dress or the Ayesha Curry dress, they're seeing it as a whole different color. Potentially both camps could say she's allowed to feel anything. She's allowed, that's what's true for her. She's even allowed to express it. The difference is what's the guardrails for when it is that you should be allowed to say it versus not. One of the key things that I noted is when this isn't checked, when this isn't addressed, what ends up happening is you'll be put in situations because of the lack of guardrails and the lack of understanding about what to say and what not to say. If Ayesha Curry thought more like you or me, she mentioned that she had a therapist. She mentioned that she was saying it to her husband. I'm sure that it was the way she talks. I'm sure her family and friends probably knew, but none of us would be talking about it, having the conversation. And Steph wouldn't be in a position to where he would have to challenge or confront or check Killer Mike, another rapper man. And the point is if you had checked this sooner, you wouldn't have to check another man. If you had checked her, you wouldn't be in a position where you have to check another man about it. So there's this thing of exactly what you're saying, which is like subjectively true. People who function primarily and orient around subjective truth struggle with other people not seeing it their way, understanding it and looking at it through their lens. And people say 80% of the people is like, maybe she's allowed to feel anything that she feels. Like she's a mother of 4. She had a radically different approach to how she thought her life was going to go. It doesn't matter how rich or famous you are. Rich people have problems. Famous people have issues. Like they're human too. But the idea that we needed to know any information about you desiring attention from other men, or we need to know as much of the details as she did, obviously people are going to have difference of opinion, but my lens is that the people who elevate those particular ideals, expression, personal truth, the right to feel heard, the need to be validated, if that's the most important thing to you, that's how OnlyFans comes about. That's how sex tapes get put online and your kids still got to go to school. That's how your husband, who does what you couldn't do, has to defend you and stand behind you 10 toes down and defend you and make sure to honor you before everybody else and doesn't pile on. He has to do the thing you didn't do. So that's a thing where I'm like, it now makes sense to me based off what your dichotomy is and mine's and how they kind of literally connect it. And I'm like, that's it. That's it. It's where you're drawing the line when it comes to what it is that you deem appropriate versus inappropriate. Those that agree with her, agree with the Jada letting us know about that she was sleeping with her son's friend. Those letting us, I could just go example by example, men and women, when they do and say these things, those that think it's fine, those that think it's okay because it's true and because it's their feelings and because the context says they're allowed to do it and because they legitimately felt that way, their line for what's acceptable is just further out. It's further out. Whereas those who are more oriented towards factoring in how their family's going to look, how their name's going to look, all the passages in Proverbs that talks heavily about how what a person does or what a woman does or what a woman says can influence and impact the home, the household, the relationship, even down to when it comes to nagging and everything. It's like part of nagging is the lack of willingness to be content, not being able to be satisfied, and the need to keep bringing things up over and over and over. I hope we don't believe that the people who feel most compelled to tell everybody about everything is also the people that you think are so content and so at peace and happy with their lot in life and so okay, that's I think that, like, am I going to say Aisha Curry's the worst woman ever? No, I'm not. I think she just likes to talk a lot, and some of her approaches is a little misguided. And the greater thing is what I'll touch on with point number 2. So let's bring in a couple more callers. We have Mott here. What's going on? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Mott, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Y'all can hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you, brother. We
What's
see
going
we see that you moisturized the beer before you got on. It's all
Oh
good.
no, I ain't. This is gonna dry in the motherfucker. I ain't even touch it. I put some of this on. I put some I ain't want my lips to be dried off. So.
Listen, man, because you know they was gonna be coming for you crazy. So what's going on, man? Now, just to clarify, everybody, Mont is somebody that you may have seen before. He's been on different podcasts and panels and platforms, right?
Yeah, I'll be bored. So
okay, all right. So, what's your feedback and thoughts about today's discussion or questions you might got in general?
So I have a difference in opinion
Mm-hmm.
than most guys when it comes to this. I find that most men, not you in particular, but most of the guys, typically don't strive to see this from other perspectives. And I think that when we at least attempt to see things from other perspectives, that's where we kind of start to at least, come together. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the opinions that men and people do have, like, for example, in the comment section, somebody said that when she said that, that Steph wasn't her first choice, that's kind of, what kind of threw them off. And I'm like, a lot of this stems from misquotes, and just like, I'm a stickler for that. Like I listen very closely, and I think I owe people that to listen very closely to what you say. And a lot of people just frivolously just like switch words around, and they don't understand how important like one word can change the entire meaning of what somebody says. So I think a lot of this stems from that. And for example, you earlier, probably about 5 minutes ago, you mentioned if LeBron James has said the same thing, would this reaction be the same? And I think that it would be the same.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
Yeah, and I want to get.
You said that if LeBron James says the exact same thing, it's going to be the exact same response.
Yeah, and I want to give context, right?
Okay.
So when you said it, you pretty much left out the part where she said, I feel like, I'm not getting that attention. So I feel like, is there something wrong with me? Kind of like, I feel like I'm not attractive, because she's always been insecure. If you watch her interview, you can tell from the beginning when she was young, she just was filled with insecurities, and it's probably never going away. She's probably just now being able to deal with it. But I think if LeBron James said, hey, I don't get any attention, and sometimes I just feel like maybe I'm not attractive, I think all the women would have probably tried to console him, because that's how women are. Like, no, even if he was ugly, they'd be like, no, you're handsome. You know what? You're not bad. I think when we give all of the context, I think things start to change. But when we leave out small things, it just it can kind of like really muddy things up. So I think most of this is due to just several things, misquotes. But another thing is just like, if I'm gonna listen to somebody, I'm going to always start in good faith.
Yep.
I'm going to try to look at your body language. I'm going to try to listen to how you say it, and I'm going to put in the effort to try to understand what you're saying, even if it takes me off, catches me off guard. If I'm going to engage in a conversation, let me try to put myself in your shoes. And I think that most of what she's ever said, I don't think it's been deeply private, as far as their relationship. Now, maybe it might be private to her as an individual, but she never told us like if Steph ain't putting it down in the bedroom, like we don't know his meat size. We just pretty much know that you are an insecure woman. You grew up insecure, and you're at a different place in your life that you didn't expect to be. These are like these are kind of really common when you think about it. These are really common things for a woman or a guy who gets married young. And I think when I watched the interview, and she actually, because I had a different opinion before I watched the interview versus when I watched it. when she told me about her childhood and how she was always into acting and entertainment and art, and she left and went to LA to chase her dream, I really understood the idea of how she always viewed herself as becoming a star in whatever relationship she would be in, and she might marry a normal guy. You know, it's like I used to think I was going to play football. I thought I was going to be in the NFL. I would never expect to be with a woman who's a superstar, and I'm not the superstar. And I think it's extremely common to process and try to deal with over time the mourning of that dream. You know, as somebody who grew up with that really being ingrained into them, I think that's very common. Now, as far as if she should be talking about it online, I think that's up to her relationship. I think she should talk to Steph. I think he should be like, hey, are you uncomfortable with me expressing myself, or how about cross any lines? That should be up to, and if he feels like she crossed lines, then absolutely, like, tone it down. Don't do interviews, maybe. But objectively looking, I don't think she's necessarily said anything egregious to me personally. So
cool. Hey, I appreciate that. You did share a lot of feedback about a couple different things in terms of the gravity of what she said, whether or not he's cool with it. Context for you really matters, or at least the idea of her being taken out of context were some potential things. Before I give a comment or response to those things, Taylor, what do you think?
I appreciate, Mott, that you really value the words that people say in context. You really value context and perspective.
Thank you.
Why are you laughing?
I read a comment. I'm sorry.
Okay, you can look me in the comments. Okay. I don't know where the evidence is that the public would respond to LeBron, that women in public would respond to LeBron in a comforting way. I'm curious to know, like, what evidence you have. What makes you think that? Aside from like how women are.
So just to clarify, so the audience is made aware, your question, Taylor, is what is the evidence that if LeBron James said he desires and wishes he got attention from other women because he feels ugly or he doesn't feel attractive anymore, what's the evidence that women would react the exact same way in terms of support as they would Ayesha?
Yeah, that they would comfort him.
Okay.
It's based on and all. It's, of course, it can't be based on anything like statistics or anything like that, but I think it's based on my general understanding of how women respond to the insecurities in other people, particularly. I wouldn't even say particularly men, but I think that if LeBron said exactly what she said, right, and you know, not taken out of context and misquoted, but if he said, you know, my wife gets so much attention, she's so beautiful, but nobody really says anything to me, and it's just like sometimes I wish I kind of, you know, women did show me a little bit of attention, because it just has me questioning: am I attractive? Am I ugly? Is there something wrong with me? I think a lot of women would take that opportunity to try to console him, even if he actually was ugly. We see that. I think we see that a lot. I don't know if you've ever seen a woman do that to somebody who wasn't attractive, or, you know, kind of like. And a lot of times women know other women, so they fish for compliments. Sometimes a woman might be around, she might be like, oh my God, oh, you know, I just this, that, and the third, and a girl would be like, oh no, girl, you're beautiful. And it's just like the nature of women. No, I think if he was just being cocky, it'll be different. But I think when people kind of show that vulnerability, I do think women tend to lie to comfort them, or just try to comfort them even if it's telling the truth. But they're willing to lie to do it also.
Yeah.
So Taylor, related to your question, my lens and my experience, both in therapy sessions, in the private practice over the last decade, and just what we observe and see, I actually think they'll lean more towards the sisterhood. And in situations like this, where if a man and woman's involved and a man says exactly that statement, that he desires attention from other women, regardless of the reason, even if it's the exact same reason, I think a lot of ladies tend to lean towards the sisterhood in these moments. The majority of women will lean towards feeling sympathy and sorrow for somebody. They're going to feel it for Savannah. They're going to feel like she's being disrespected. They're going to feel like she deserves better. That, like, you could obviously, you may be surrounded by the most incredible, empathetic women, who I agree with you will do that with men that are single and are ugly or not very attractive. Oh, don't worry, they'll show sympathy then. But a very well off guy on this level, as is Ayesha, in the public eye with a gendered counterpart that everybody knows. If it's a woman, and especially one that a lot of women like, admire, respect, and look up to, I think you're forgetting that other piece, that a lot of ladies they will typically rock with the women and the woman in this scenario, and they may not be as forgiving as perhaps you might think. Now, with what you said earlier, that I wanted to kind of throw at you and see your thoughts about it. Your big push that you were saying in terms of understanding the context, understanding, for sure what she's coming from. And I, believe it or not, actually came to very similar conclusions as you did. The difference was based off of the original point I was making earlier in the conversation. It typically starts with the line being drawn. And you kind of gave an example, was like, she didn't let us know his member, how big it was or something like that. And I'm like, now that's an example of where you drew the line, where it's like, if it was true, if she felt like he wasn't satisfying her, if it is indeed legitimately small, and the reason for why we're wanting to acknowledge and support her right to do this is because that's how she feels, it's her truth, and we're just trying to understand her. And she says the thing that you personally now think is going too far. Now you're in the camp with everybody else that just drew the line differently than you. So I don't assume, and I appreciate the fact that you gave me enough credit for not being somebody that you think just came to these conclusions just haphazardly, but actually, you watched it, I watched it, we actually listened for context and stuff like that. I see you as a decent intellectual dude who can understand multiple different competing ideas, and as is Taylor, myself. So I see us as very comparable. But what I'm going to pose out to you is, the way I kind of view this situation is like the border debate when it comes to undocumented individuals, right? So people on the left, liberals, believe that people who came over here or crossed the border or overstayed their visas or whatever and are currently still here, and they're now in undocumented status here illegally, they haven't actually done anything wrong until they've done something else, stole from somebody, attacked someone, raped someone. Now they see that as a crime. There's a whole different set of other people who's more to the right, who looks at this situation and says, regardless of what specific acts they do while they're here, they're not even supposed to have crossed the boundary in the first place of the border. So by default, just by stepping over the line, you are already in the wrong. Now, you could be more wrong, you could be less wrong, but you're already in the wrong, because the act of crossing the border to begin with, for some people, is seen as illegal. And it is. Now, some people will say it could be treated as a misdemeanor or this or that, but regardless of what the charge is, it's still seen as illegal. In this scenario, with discussions about men and women and what Ayesha said or Jada said, my lens is the people who tend to be more oriented towards Taylor and myself in terms of mindset and approach. You're so far removed. Your line for how it is that you should be, quote unquote, expressing whatever's going on in your relationship, that's the border. That's the border. So when you say things about your relationship and it's not positive, and more specifically, it's not flattering to your husband, to your wife, to your boyfriend, to your girlfriend, to your kids, and it's not flattering, The people who are more a little bit on the right, they just draw their line a little bit sooner than you do. Their line is, we shouldn't even know about this. Maybe your friends should know. Maybe your therapist should know who she says she has. Maybe your pastor should know. They claim they go to church. Maybe your spiritual advisor should know. There's a whole host of people who can know this truth and can help you through this, especially people who is actually qualified to do it. So then, like, what's your thoughts about like those people like me who kind of draw those lines in that way? Do you think those who draw the line there are just like not being fair, or do you think we're being unreasonable for drawing the line there and saying, if you need to open up with people, there's better, more appropriate avenues of how to go about it?
Good question. I think that there's I pride myself on being reasonable and sensible, right? I think everybody's going to have a different line, but if we're operating in a sense of, if we're in this public sphere, right? Sphere, I think that the things that she said were not objectively gross, if that makes sense. Like, I think that as us coming from probably similar communities, right? We're all American. I think there are things that are just objectively egregious and objectively like, yo, that is private information. I think that with people misquoting her, that people are like, for example, a lot of people think that she just wasn't into her husband. And I think that before we even get to the line, the misquoting and taking out of context precedes that, which then makes people think that she crossed the line. And a lot of people are operating from a place of, you said you ain't even want your rich ass husband. And she never said that. It's like, she kind of like quite clearly said the opposite of, I always wanted him. I just didn't think he wanted me. Like, so I completely understand what you're saying. But even in the example that you gave, there was an objective, not even objective, there was a factual line being crossed of, okay, this is illegal, right? It's written down. It's like this is a law, and I stand with the law. Versus the other people was like, yo, I'm gonna be a little bit more reasonable. They didn't do nothing wrong. They chilling here. I totally understand the position of everybody has a different line, but I do think some people come from different backgrounds and we come from probably similar backgrounds. I do think there has to be like within reason, like, all right, she didn't go crazy. She didn't say nothing too ridiculous. We don't actually know details about her actual relationship. Outside of, she didn't want to be married when she didn't see herself getting married growing up, or things kind of moved a bit faster than she could kind of catch up with. But I completely understand your perspective. But I just think that I don't think that even if she crossed my boundary, I would be able to admit that, even when it comes to the fake taking off the ring thing, right?
Yeah, the joke. Yeah.
I think it was a joke. Whether we thought it was funny, that's a different story, but I can acknowledge that it was a joke. Now, some people are like, yo, she should have never did that. She's a married woman. I may agree with you. However, is what she did objectively like just out of line? And if it crossed my boundary, it would have been something that I addressed when she got home. Like, yo, don't play with me like that. Don't ever play with me like that. It would have just been, it'd have been that simple. We'd have talked about it, and that would have been that. But I think that at the end of the day, it's like, it was a joke. She might have went too far, but it was a joke, and I can reasonably say, it crossed my boundary, but I get, somebody else, it might not cross theirs.
I'm gonna ask you this question, and then you can respond. And Taylor, I'm sure if you have additional questions or feedback you want to have, you can certainly have it. What is or would be the goal of a woman sharing her desire? And I'm intentionally picking this one because I actually think this particular example is probably, out of all the different things she's said and volunteered that we didn't ask for, I do think that this particular question or statement is interesting, because I'm always thinking about what you said in terms of, if men did this, how would women respond type thing. What would be the goal of a woman sharing her like desire to get attention from other men, publicly, of course, on a podcast, large group, social media, very public forum, versus in private with a mentor, with a mental health professional? What's the goal that you can imagine between those two women? The one that prioritizes bringing these things up with like a private mentor, a mental health professional, or just in private with her significant other, versus a woman who brings up those things on a podcast, large group, social media thing. What's the goal you'd imagine, if you're trying to be understanding? What could the goal possibly be for those two women?
I'll answer the question and then I'll give context as to why I'm not sure it's applicable to this situation. I think that I think it's reasonable to say that a woman who is saying that publicly, maybe she's trying to broadcast that she'd like some attention, and maybe somebody can actually give it to her, right? And I think that the goal of a woman who says that in private is because maybe she's just trying to get some clarity, speak to her friends or whoever she's talking to. Now, the reason that I don't think this is necessarily applicable, and I'm saying that I don't think that it's applicable, I could be wrong. I don't think that she's tactical when she talks. I don't think that she had a goal.
That's possible. That's definitely possible.
I don't think that she had a goal. I think that she got caught up in conversation, just being relaxed and just talking, and it came out. And another thing that kind of didn't help it was, before she could put out her full statement, people started talking like, kind of immediately before she could say exactly what she, finish saying what she wanted to say, or clean it up a bit so that she doesn't feel like people are going to misunderstand her actual reason for saying it. But I would just say that I don't think personally that she was tactical when she said it, and that she meant, and that she had a goal in mind at all. I think she was just talking.
Yeah, that's definitely possible, but because I don't know her motives, and I usually don't know most people's motives or why they do or say what they do, I can typically just go off of like what they actually did and kind of work backwards from there. And you're right. Like, she could very well just be, it just comes out. She's just, doing word vomit for sure. The reason why I asked that question is because I lean more towards, though, if there's different avenues of how people can get help, if how people can be supported, if people can be heard, and it's more private, it protects the relationship. There's not a lot of scrutiny that's coming on the relationship, and they choose the other option, the more public option. This is no different than women that say, when they dress and post, when they put very provocative clothing on or very little and post it online and say they're doing it for themselves. They can come up with these motives or reasons for why it is that they felt that they needed to blast it and put it out before everybody else. But once you have that conversation and suggest like, hey, why don't you take those down and keep them on your phone, or just share them with your significant other? Why can't this stay between you and your husband, you and your boyfriend? They're like, no, it needs to. Then that's letting me know it's a little bit deeper than just something going on between us. And it's more about, I want an audience. I want attention. I want validation beyond you and a therapist and a pastor. This is going beyond us. And now this is starting to teeter more so on them, and whatever the reason or motive, warped reason it could be. Yeah. Like you said, it could be innocent, and she's just yapping it up because she did say she talks a lot. Or it could be, if this is a repeated pattern where almost every time you're getting on a microphone, you're kind of sharing things that a lot of people don't know and didn't need to know, and potentially that this is one of the signs of something that potentially I'm suggesting that men and women need to be mindful of, is if you're not super comfortable, and if you've drawn that line where certain things everybody should know and certain things they shouldn't know, these are actually some of the traits and signs you want to kind of be paying attention to, because it's horrible for you to have to not only deal with your actual issues, but now have to deal with the issues that everybody else knows that you have that's going on. But Taylor, what's your feedback and your thoughts?
I just have one. Well, I'll just say one thing. I don't think that we should need all this context to figure out how she feels about her husband. Like, I just don't when I definitely agree that her comments are taken out of context. Then I think she needs media training, because if it's that difficult if it's that difficult to figure out where she stands, and it's this easy to twist things up, she's just not clear enough. And and so I think that yes, things are taken out of context. I also think that people can communicate more clearly to where there's not all of this vagueness and all of this room for question and so much margin. She has such huge margins for error that open her up to scrutiny that I think can be fixed with some consciousness and awareness. I don't think she's maliciously doing things. I think that she's unaware. I think has some level of self-absorption. I think labeling her as self-absorbed is a reach. I don't know her, okay? But I think that there's a level of self-absorption here where she does have high value on her feelings and her experience and her personal thoughts without considering how it's going to impact others. So I think that. So yeah, I'll leave it there. I think there's some self-absorption, some unawareness, not malicious, definitely vague. And I don't think that in general we should need this much context to figure out how a spouse feels about a spouse.
Got you. Because when it comes to I understand that if she spoke better, right, she could get her points across to the extent that most people understand better what she's saying. But I think that as we've gotten to actually see her over the years, I think that as she speaks, she processes.
I agree.
A lot of times these are things that she hasn't actually processed yet. And we get to kind of see her in real time process things that she probably didn't even know was there, or that she may not known were problematic. But I think we've gotten to see her kind of grow over the years, and kind of becoming like we got to see her before she, like, maybe when she was a little bit bigger. Now you can see like she's fit, she's been working out, like, over the years. She's gotten at least to a better point physically and when it comes to health wise, but also probably kind of being a new mom and stuff like that, and kind of losing her what she thought was her identity. And I've dealt with this before with my woman, as far as being so high achieving, but then you with me, and I'm like, I want a housewife, like, but I want a balance of like housewife and woman who's ambitious. Like, you can be ambitious still, but that where it's like, I achieved this in college and I achieved this growing up, and I've always got these trophies, and I've done this, I've done that, and it's like, now I don't know who I am. I can't pull from these things. It's like, wow, I got to start from ground zero. Who am I? So we kind of got to see that who am I moment with her, like, live. So,
well, yeah, that's true. I think she does process in real time. I think that though, because of the nature of her very celebrity, public, big relationship, you shouldn't be on the internet then. Like, that's even more reason to stop. It's more reason to stop. Like, we don't need to be seeing people's insides turn out on the internet and like eat it up like fodder. Like, it's kind of weird that we could even say that you've seen her grow up. It's kind of cringy to me. But I think you're right. I think that has happened, and I think that that's even more reason to tone it down and stop and stop doing so much. Because then if you're processing in real time, that means you are not considering the implications of what you're doing. You're a liability. You're a liability, and you don't know. So you haven't considered the impact that this is going to have on your husband, your family, on you, on your children. So processing in real time is for like is like for your therapist, for your husband, for hopefully it's a trusted friend and someone who is reasonable and can give objective and wise advice if that's the route that you're going to go. But yeah, I think we do see her processing in real time, and all the more reason to take it in private, because you cannot reflect and process You cannot complete the process of reflection while you're processing. And so I just can't emphasize enough just how much of a liability that is, because you haven't considered what this is about to do. And the reality is her husband is going to be the one that takes the impact, even if we're talking about just as a principle in marriage. This is a principle. The husband, like if the wife is going off the rails, we were talking about financial irresponsibility earlier, right? Who's taking who's going to be like the head of having to clean this thing up? Like let's be actually honest and realistic. So to open up your marriage like that in such an irresponsible way is authentic. It's your truth. It can be honest, but it's, I think, bottom line problematic. Regardless of how we want to slice it, I think that we're going to end up that you're going to create a problem that you are not going to be the one cleaning up at the very end of the day. Whatever kind of impact that might have, it could be a financial impact, an image impact, an impact to your legacy, an impact to your children's emotions, their psyche. I mean, there's just so many things that are unaccounted for. And that's why I think at the bottom line, it's problematic, no matter how much we want to slice it up. That's where I get to.
I think that it's subjective when it comes to whether some people want to see vulnerability and whether some people think they're like, hey, keep that in your house. I don't want to see that. Shut up and dribble. I think that me, for example, I tend to like vulnerability. Like, for example, like I thought for a long time, I don't know if y'all watch boxing, but I felt like I got to see Tank grow over the years.
Yeah.
I felt like I got to see him calm down. I felt like I got to see a transition in him going from like young, wild, being somebody who drinks, and then it's like, you know, when I see him in interviews now, like he's relaxed, he's chill. I thought I'm one of those people who actually, I like seeing that celebrities are real, and I like to see them grow, and I like to see where they are now versus where they came from. So I think that's probably more of a personal, I don't want to see that. I just want to see you, I just want to see you do what I want to see from you. But the other thing that I would say is I'm far from a type of guy. I believe that the way that your woman shows up is the way that other men will judge you. And I'm a man who I care about what my peers think. However, to me, my peers are not only men who they're not only men who I think have the intellect that I do. They're men who I think have the empathy that I do. They're men who I think that are reasonable like I am. So there are other things that go into this, and I don't know if Steph is bothered by this. If he is bothered by this, then I absolutely think that she should take that into account, because it would be selfish if she didn't. But I know for me, I don't care about the opinions of people I deem to be unreasonable. Those just kind of brush by. I get judged all the time, like feminine stuff like that, stuff like about me being a leader and all that type of stuff. They unreasonable. I don't even care what they talking about. So I guess that's the other thing that I'll say is I don't care about the opinions of people that I deem to be unreasonable, which most of the people comment, not you guys. You guys have very, reasonable takes. Most people haven't done the work to even try to understand or see what she actually did say. So I don't know if he may be bothered by this, but it seems like his peers have come out in support of her. Cam Newton, Gilbert Arenas, are two people that I can think of who are like, I understand what she's saying. So, but I totally understand your perspective, though.
Yeah, man. So to kind of wrap it up, I do think, and again, you've used it multiple times about context and understanding, and what I'm basically saying is that both sides of the spectrum, both sets of people that's looking at the dress, so to speak, when somebody keeps referencing context and feelings and validation and like understanding, the operating system is one in which all those things are a given, when the other side is, we shouldn't even know about it. It's one thing to say I was taken out of context. It's another thing to say there is no context because I don't know anything. I never heard anything. So the baseline What I'm basically saying is the baseline of what I think Proverbs is talking about is trying to put yourself relationally in a position where both your significant other and you yourself aren't putting yourself in the position in the first place for there to be confusion, to be taken out of context. I'll give you an example, and this is a really interesting thought experiment. And of course, you don't have to answer it, but I would ask you straight up, are you perfect?
Hell no.
Right. Is your girlfriend, fiance, or wife perfect?
Not at all.
Would you be willing to give me an example of something that she did in the past that was toxic or problematic that she's improved on?
Oh God. She's a completely different woman now. She for example.
Pause.
Mm-hmm.
The person who's willing to answer that question. Here we go. The person that's willing to answer that question. This is what we're talking about the mindset shift.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not owed that. My audience isn't owed that. You and her may have some agreement. Marriage minded is I'm going to protect her image. And if I am going to reference her and speak on her, it's going to be neutral or it's going to be positive when I'm talking in public on a public platform. You have the answers to that. She has the answers to that for you. That's not my business unless I'm your therapist, a close mentor, or a close friend or somebody like that. So the operating system where people can feel comfortable sharing things about their person's flaws, weaknesses, shortcomings, issues, problems, toxic traits that they had or used to have. Those are all things that either we should not know or the person who it's about should be voluntarily bringing up about themselves. When it comes to being marriage minded or family minded, not self-oriented, not, well, I feel like, or I think, whatever it is that was about to come out your mouth was always going to be taken out of context. It was always going to be taken out of context. So what I'm suggesting is that brief little example is what I think our conversation was about, where one frame of reference is, oh, we can talk about it. This is something that she had issues with and she got better at, or, she was toxic with this in the past or extremely problematic and now she's improved. There's a whole different frame of reference. So when people are picking or choosing, a lot of times what you're describing, when people are saying, well, you got to be more understanding, people are saying, no, you got to start with respect.
Mm-hmm.
I can be understanding and recognize there's a way of how to go about this. But when we decide there's not a way, there's no guardrails, there's no discretion, right? Of avoiding causing offense or revealing private information. When discretion is completely removed because we've elevated to the top, understanding, validation, feeling heard, and my truth, this is gone. This is functionally missing. And now they get to push the line further and further and further out until they have to do something so bad that 90% of people in the country is like, okay, now that's bad. Even if what you're saying and I'm saying is, she's a little stupid. She talks a lot. Probably wasn't the worst thing ever. The men that understand this, the women that understand this, it's not to say that their perspective is absolutely the best and your perspective is absolutely wrong. What I'm suggesting is what's most ideal. And what's most ideal for a man and for a woman is for, and I'll say this to the ladies, if a man is talking about that he's interested in wishing that he got more attention from other women, especially publicly, that's a problem. I don't care how understanding he is. I really don't care how much he feels about that. That's not our business. That's between you, him, and the people that you're working with in your personal lives. So if a man says some of the things that, if a man is outing and sharing all this information that we didn't ask for and is not favorable and is not flattering, my lens when you're doing this publicly of all the different ways of how you could do it and how you can address it, you choose to do it in this format, that man doesn't respect you. that man doesn't respect you. Because the number one thing for a man that's mindful of his wife's image, of his children's image, is not saying or putting himself in a position for there to be any question of whether or not they're being respected and there's all the scrutiny in their relationship. That's the difference. Now, again, people can say, oh, I just disagree, Jeff. She's allowed to say it. Fine. My lens is when you're the most ideal situation is not putting yourselves in the environment for you to be taken out of context to begin with, if it's not positive. I'll give you final words.
Oh, I don't fully disagree with you. I think that there's something there in what you said. However, I do know that certain people are a little bit more. Certain people, like for example, on my page, I don't just post like that because I have it's kind of like a couple. It's really my Instagram, but I kind of like post a lot of stuff about my girl too. And I post that like, yo, everything's not perfect. I know it might look perfect, but I posted everything's not perfect. And I might post, small examples of, things that I'm willing to share that like we had to work through. And just for me personally, I think that even the reason that I come and I talk on these panels, I think that I'm helping people. And I think that, my example, even taking me and like having kids by different women and like me using myself as an example. I think that's powerful. Or me sometimes using my relationship as an example, I think that's powerful. But everybody's in different positions. Some people, it's not optimal for them to do that. And I think that what you're saying about, it's like abstinence. It's like nobody can say that abstinence is not the best form of protection when it comes to sex.
Yeah.
When it comes to a marriage or a relationship and in any type of scrutiny, of course, the best thing that you probably could do is not say anything, never be seen. None of that. I think I agree with you there. That's probably the best practice. But there are some people who are just willing to share a little bit. And I think, those people they should have a line. They should have their own line. But I agree with you.
Nah, man. I appreciate it. And I think men like me and you.
I'm sorry, y'all.
Men,
I really got to go.
Okay. Appreciate you.
Right,
appreciate you. Yeah, men like me and you, I think, are trying to figure out how to walk that fine line of being vulnerable, being transparent, not presenting an image, right? Right. I think that there's definitely a space for people respecting and valuing authenticity. I'm of the camp of even when we do that, even when I do that, right? I just said last week that I lost my temper with my wife, and I'm not proud of it because I've prided myself for years now of getting so much better at being able to control my anger, But what I didn't do is go into details about what that looks like if she loses hers, right? Like, so even then, a lot of that is going to be rooted in like what I did, how I handled things, what I said, and trying to shield anything that she may have done or said that maybe wasn't as favorable. Obviously people can feel differently about it. And like you said, man, it's true that there's definitely relationships where people are just more okay with it and more open. My lens is always going to be protective with men and women, especially with the red flags we listed. I want us to get in the habit of getting with people who know how to do that and know who to do it with versus having to deal with it after the fact because they just keep talking when we at social events. They just say the wrong thing over and over and over, right? But no, man, I genuinely appreciate it, man. My thought process is, and we definitely got to do this again, and definitely when I get on more panels and stuff, if you're on, I could see us having like a full-on thing. We'll ignore everybody else, right? My lens when it comes to the Jadas, the Ayeshas,
God, you put the Jadas and Ayeshas in it because I'm not a Gabrielle Jada. I don't like them.
Yeah. Listen, but they all like for us, they're all in that bucket. And I know we see it's totally different in terms of what specifically they're saying, right? Yeah. But in the end, they're sharing all this information that we didn't ask for, didn't need to know. And my lens when it came to these two different approaches of how a woman could share her truth more privately or more publicly is which one requires emotional intelligence. If it's just talking and just blabbing and sharing out what you think and how you feel, that doesn't actually require much emotional intelligence at all, other than the initial reflection of what you how you feel. Emotional intelligence piece is knowing when and who to share those things with. So that's to me like the missing link, man. But listen, bro, I appreciate you. I love the pushback. I love the thoughtfulness of your responses. It's something that I think is necessary. And although we may end up on two different ends of the spectrum, obviously you're representing the people that's rocking with her, and I'm representing the people that's like, we should not be supporting this, whether men do it or women do it. But
Yeah.
I think both sides, you and myself included, I can feel good in saying that I think we both articulated our viewpoints pretty well and defended our perspectives pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say I don't it's probably a bunch of people who agree with my position on this,
Mhm.
who are probably radically the people who you were mentioning, that, you know, people without a line and, you know, just kind of selfish and just, you know, individual minded people.
Mhm.
I just so happen to understand her perspective a little bit. However, me and those people probably disagree with a lot of things, like when you brought up the thing about, you know, putting on a particular outfit but you want everybody else. I tell women, you don't wear, when women say I wear makeup for myself, I'll be like, no you don't. Then put it on when you go in the house and take it off when you leave, right? I'll be on the same thing. So yeah, we just happen to agree on this one, but I promise you I'm objective in everything that I do.
Nah, man, I genuinely appreciate that, man. So I'm gonna bring on actually the other person. He left, so I'm good with that. I had a final point if you actually wanted to stick on
Absolutely.
to kind of wrap things up. So for one, y'all, so I don't forget, let me read the super chats real quick. Andre C. Hatchett, thank you for the 199. Walter Davis, Jeff St. James, the world famous Taylor Chandler Live. Appreciate the two of you moving relationship and social awareness knowledge forward. Thank you for the donation and for the positive feedback. Jeremy Brown, $10. Jeff and Taylor, how important is introspection in regards to personal development and therefore relationships? And do you feel it's lacking nowadays? Absolutely, I think it's lacking. I think that people, and even with discussions like this, I think that people tend to gravitate towards celebrities and influencers that are already confirming how they already think and feel about certain topics and things. So those who kind of are rocking with Ayesha in an instance like this, they may not be using this as an opportunity to be very introspective. They may see this as like, yeah, because that's how I feel, or I felt that way before. And because their empathy is so high, they're not really being introspective of some of the concerns of what people on the other side may potentially be feeling. Raheem the Rabbit, well, shut up. What's going on, bro? The conversation is vital. Salute to the godson. Appreciate it. Stuart D. Knight, author, $5. Thank you for the donation. Shout out to NOB Creek, becoming a new member. Ali, what's going on, brother? Salute to my brother. Keep dropping those gems. Thank you for the 1999. Saul, thank you for the 10. Ali, the number one red flag with women is if you tell her the truth and it upsets her, but she loves it when you lie to her. Don't let it go over your heads, family. Yeah. That's a whole nother episode in and of itself. And Boogie reacts. Shout out to Taylor. She speaks so eloquently. Shout out to everybody that joined us live, man. There's a heck of a lot of comments. Oh my God. I don't even know how many comments this is. This may be, oh man, this is a lot more comments than I have no way I'm going to get through all these comments, y'all. So, long story short, y'all, like I said, I have a lens, I have a perspective, I have a spectrum of what I think is going on. I think those of us who tends to hold the ideals of personal truth and understanding a little bit higher than everything else, we're going to constantly try to kind of elevate those ideals. Whereas those who maybe elevate more respect or tradition or protecting and people not knowing certain things, they're going to kind of hold up as the highest ideals like privacy and people not knowing certain things. So I think that's more so, believe it or not, what's kind of going on more than anything else. But I will say this, and this is a message to the fella specifically, and Mont kind of alluded to it, that he is able to distinguish things that he agrees with women on and things that he doesn't agree with things with women on. If you are a fella, if you are a guy, out of this whole chat, out of this whole live that I'm about to do, I'm about to say this as clear as possible. And the reason why I even made the initial post I did about men being more mindful of these types of moves and behaviors. If you are a man that is unable to point out problematic or toxic behavior with the woman you're with, or with women in general, especially publicly. If you're not allowed to say it, if you're fearful of saying it, just realize that men are allowed to do that. Men are allowed to point out problematic, concerning, or toxic behaviors that are happening with the woman that's in their life or with women in general. They're allowed to do it. Men are allowed to see those distinctions, point them out, and decide if they're going to reward or withhold relationships and resources based off of the things they're seeing. Males are not allowed to. Men are allowed to see those things and decide if they're going to reward it with a relationship, with a marriage, with kids, and with access to the resources. Males are just grateful for the female attention. Men are allowed to disagree with women. Men are allowed to point out and say, that was disrespectful. That's not how you treat that man. That's not becoming of a woman who. Men can say that. Men can do that. And it's okay. Men can do that in their regular everyday lives. They can do that on social media. They don't even have to come off like they're hating women in general. They're just allowed to disagree. They're allowed to point out things from their lens of perspective that they think are wrong, shameful, or destructive to relationships, to the community, to culture, to society. They're allowed to say it. Males are the ones that feel like they're not allowed to. So if you want to do a thought experiment, fellas, now again, this is not therapy, but a thought experiment, if you want to understand where you are in the spectrum of a man that's constantly elevating too highly, potentially the feelings of women and what they think and what they want, or if you're in the other extreme where you don't care at all, and you should value it to some degree, the middle area is where you need to be. The middle is where you can acknowledge when women do amazing, great things. And the middle is where you can acknowledge things that you think are problematic or potentially wrong or even toxic. If you've never been able to say publicly in front of women, especially all the women that's in your friend group, all the women that's in your family, even the woman you're with, if you're never allowed to say that out loud, that's an indication that you're maybe too far on the left side of the spectrum, where you've elevated female feelings, female emotions, female need to be validated and heard to a level that needs to be placed for God. If you can't critique it, if you can't scrutinize it, if you can't give negative feedback about it, and if you can't challenge it, that's God. So if you have women or women's feelings or emotions there, don't be surprised when you'll be in situations and environments where lack of respect will be there, being taken for granted of will be there. You'll potentially be dealing with a woman who's constantly looking for the better option because she's going to be looking for the man that she respects. So if you never challenge her, if you never see any differences of things that you think needs to be improved on, if you're never willing to say it, that's a major concern that you honestly need to start to take more into consideration. Ladies, I would actually flip it. If a man goes out of his way to point out publicly all the things that you do wrong, publicly, not privately, publicly, all your shortcomings, all your issues, if he's honestly saying that at one point in your relationship he wasn't attracted to you, and this isn't information we all ask, this is just was he volunteering. If a man is going out of his way to let us know that you weren't his type, that man does not respect you. And that man does not love you. A man that loves you, and a man that respects you, is going to look at it through the lens of how you're going to be seen. So again, if he's going out of his way to display and share things that's not favorable about you, his job is to protect you. His job is to be the head. His job is to be the one to take the bullets, not the one shooting them at you. So ladies and gents, I hope that y'all love this. Mont, did you have any final words or final feedback or thoughts about like how this show went, or feedback for everybody else?
I think I had a question for what you just said. Actually, I was
Sure.
curious. Like, how do you, as a man who is like, in my opinion, I think that you're really great for this space, in particular because you are balanced, right? But not only that, I think that you communicate in a way where women can understand that you're not being malicious to them or you don't have a vendetta to take out on them. So they're actually very prone to being open to having a conversation with you and actually listening to what you say. Versus another man might say exactly what you're saying. However, it may have came out a certain way, or he may have used different words, and it's at the end of the day, there won't be any improvement from anybody, the community, or the women, anything like that. But how do you wrestle with being a man who is speaking on what you think is right? However, there will be a lot of women who are unreasonable and think that you're just a chauvinist or a they'll say stuff like you hate black, they'll say crazy stuff even if you're reasonable, right?
Yeah.
And those unreasonable women having opinions or saying things about your woman for being with you. How do you wrestle with that? Or is that just a thing of, just kind of like chalk it, it's a part of the game type of thing. Charge it to the game.
I'm gonna be honest with you, bro. It depends so much on different factors. The first and most obvious is if I'm even having an actual conversation with them, like I'm having with you. 90% of the time when I'm talking the way I'm talking with you, it's not. It just doesn't go there. It just doesn't even go there. It's like, and I think it's because I'm not matching energy. I'm not raising my tone. I'm not calling them out their name. These are things that a lot of guys kind of do, and then they get shocked. Well, look how she's acting. She's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, but you called her a B and said, and you said all the triggering things that you knew was going to keep her from being able to listen and receive what it is that you had to offer. And then number two, I think that although I'm modifying how it is that I'm communicating these things, that doesn't stop me from wanting to say it because men and women at times would disagree with me. I think the truth is more important than whether they like me or not. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be a dick and try to get them not to like me. So that's if that, and I guess the best way I'm phrasing it is my view and lens is if the person receiving the truth is your highest ideal, you're going to figure out and comport as much as you can to try to get that across. If the most important thing is for you to be heard, or for the truth to just be the truth, regardless of how I package it, it's speaking the truth without love. You actually don't care if they receive it. When it comes to talking specifically with women, especially on stuff like this, even when I've done the panel discussions with all women around me, I'm talking to the audience through them. I'm not even thinking about the person in front of me. I'm thinking about the women who things they're doing things wrong and they haven't been told the harsh truth of male sexuality. They haven't been taught the reality of that it's not sweet out here, that your emotions and your feelings is not enough to scream men, that you need more input, that you need more guidance, that you need more mentorship. So when I'm talking to whoever it is that I'm talking to, my mindset is all like me and you talking. I'm talking about all the men and women that have their varying feelings about this topic. Although I'm answering your question, I'm literally talking because again, I'm thinking constantly about the audience. I'm talking about the men and the women. So even what me and you just did, I'm thinking through the lens of like all the men that's not great at articulating why it is that they're feeling something inside of here that's like, that just feels wrong. Like that was uncalled for, but I don't know exactly what to say. And if I say it out loud, women gonna call me misogynist and they're gonna say that I hate women and this and that. And it's like, I don't hate women, but I feel like that's wrong. Like, I feel like we shouldn't know about this. I feel like that's more private. Like I'm trying to figure out how to speak to both men and women based on the topic. And when your goal is that and not trying to win, typically I feel like we'll do a much better job of actually being heard.
Absolutely, 1,000%. I agree with you.
Nah, bro. Listen, I appreciate it.
I appreciate this too. Like I said, I do this because And I'm gonna start doing my own stuff, just start talking on, YouTube and all that, just because I feel like I can offer. I feel like I have something to offer, I feel like this conversation here was great, and I knew it would be great. I can tell, from how you articulate yourself well. You're not you don't try to be aggressive and things like and talk over people, all that type of stuff. So I knew this would be a good conversation. So I appreciate it. And I think what I saw, I think you from my side of town, like you from the city, right?
North.
Yeah. I'm from South Philly, but
Okay.
you still, from the same city. So yeah, I appreciate this.
Nice, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, we definitely gonna do this again. I'm gonna make sure I save your contact for sure. And y'all, I'm gonna get through these final different comments and then I'm gonna wrap things up. But listen, bro, I appreciate your time for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, y'all. So last but not least, I had a particular book in mind based off of everything going on. And believe it or not, with some of the points that Ayesha raised, this is a book called Who Moved My Cheese? This was a book that me wrapping things up in grad school was a book that was recommended that I had to complete as I moved towards licensure. And the reason why this book is so helpful is because, and it's very, very helpful, especially for ladies, I think, is it's a very short book, very small, very cheap book too. And it goes through the lens of what it is that happens with people when they try to do it all, when they try to do it all and have it all. And what typically ends up happening, and is that they show that in different quadrants based off of what you choose, how there's going to be things that you're going to lose. And for many people, whether they realize it or not, when it comes to, let me fix this real quick. When it comes to, especially women, wanting to be mothers, wanting to work, wanting to have successful careers, wanting to be great wives, want to be this and want to be that. The reality is like nobody, men or women, are going to be able to have and do it all simultaneously. And this book does a great job of helping you to conceptually understand what tends to happen when you pour more into one area or different areas at different points in your life, in different seasons. If you read a book like this and conceptually understand what the choices and decisions are that you're making earlier, potentially you won't have nearly as many regrets later because you'll understand what it is that you're sacrificing. You'll understand that there's a time to do this and a time to do that. If you want to prioritize kids in your 30s, that's your choice. If you want to prioritize kids in your 20s, that's your choice. But there's consequences that comes with those choices. So for ladies, if you decide 32, 33, 34 is when I'm going to start potentially getting serious about wanting to have children, you may have more increased difficulty getting pregnant, not being able to have as many children as you would have liked or wanted, not being able to have as much energy as you would have had 5, 10, 15 years ago before you decided to do this. So what my lens is this type of book, Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. Great book. Great reference. I think can be extremely helpful for men and women in terms of just conceptually being able to better understand what life is kind of throwing at you. And somebody said, Sino had to read this book for work last year. Absolutely. So yeah, y'all, I think that it's absolutely a helpful book. It's something that I think, could really move waves. And this is like one of the most, I think this book has sold like 20 million copies, something crazy. So if you haven't read this book, it's very short. I think I read it in 2 days. It's something you can easily zip through, but it will help you to understand of what is it in this season of my life that I do need to prioritize. And what is it that I can push off, or what is it that I can focus on right now, versus feeling as though you're going to have every season you're having regrets about different things. So just kind of putting that out there. Listen, y'all, I'm tired. It's been a long chat for sure. I'm totally apologize. I cannot read nearly all the different chats because it looks like there's maybe 1,000 chats in this thing, which is crazy. So I hope that this was helpful between identifying red flags, understanding the spectrum between elevating people on the one end or elevating people's feelings, the need for validation, attention, the need to be heard, and the need to be understood. If those are the highest ideals of how that can present some potential issues, especially relationally. And then on the other end, on the other extreme, is that you don't prioritize those things at all. People like me is actually saying that those things are important. They're not the most important, and that they actually should be in the middle. The things that are more important than your feelings, the things that are more important than your need to be heard from anybody and everybody, is your status, if you're married, if you're in a relationship, if you have children, how much you're willing to care about how your actions and your words can affect them. And more importantly, are there other ways and means that I can still be heard, seen, validated, and helped that doesn't require everybody in my life or everybody on social media knowing? People like me says, yeah, there's a way to do that for sure. So I hope that this was helpful, y'all. So yeah, despite popular belief, just because somebody disagrees with Ayesha and Jada and Gabrielle Unions and Michelle Obama and every woman that feels she wants to share all these personal things about her relationship, it's okay to disagree with them. It's okay to still believe that women are allowed to have, feelings. And just real quick to kind of sum up what I'm basically saying, are women allowed to speak and discuss the difficulties of being a mother or wife? Yes. Are they allowed to speak generally about what those issues are publicly? Yes. Are they allowed to speak on specific issues that can make their man or children look bad, feel bad, and or possibly bring shame or embarrassment? I don't think so. Not publicly. Privately? Perhaps. With their therapist? Absolutely. Publicly? No. And that's the difference. And I think that your answer to that final question will probably shape and blur how you've seen situations like this. I distinguished it between single-minded or marriage-minded. Other people distinguished it, like Taylor distinguished it between being more prioritizing subjective truth versus objective truth. However you want to spin it, I think that there's just people who get it, who understand it, and then there's people who don't. If you're somebody who gets the difference of what it is that I'm saying, I highly recommend doing life with men and or women that just get it versus trying to change people to seeing something radically different. That's just my personal viewpoint and opinion, of course. Obviously, you all can disagree with me, and I'm sure as these comments come, as this video goes out and is officially posted, I'll be hearing quite a bit. But ladies, I have one final question for you, and then this is literally the end. Based off of everything I just shared, based off of everything Mott and Taylor and the other guests have shared, after everything that was shared, you have something to consider. If the majority of men are saying they don't like this, they don't see it as respectful, and it would heavily impact their ability to date or marry a woman, and the majority of women and the minority of men are saying that they're okay with it, who are all of you heterosexual women trying to date? Who are y'all trying to be in relationships with? Who are you trying to be married by? And who are you trying to have children with? If the overwhelming majority of men feel this way about it, and the overwhelming majority of women feel this way about it, if you're planning on dating and doing life with men, you can prioritize what women think and just what women feel. Or you can prioritize what the majority of men think and find a man that's understanding of the time and place when it's appropriate for you to open up and share these things, and with whom. If you're planning on staying single, if you're planning on dating and being with women, then I guess you shouldn't care what men have to think about this topic. But if 80% of men, if not higher, is saying something's off, this is wrong, this is disrespectful, maybe something more important than Ayesha's feelings or even your feelings, they are considering. All right, y'all. So that's it for today's live. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that y'all enjoyed this. It was definitely pretty long, but I think it was definitely necessary. And I guess I'll see with the feedback what it is that y'all think. And real quick, we got to decide between next episode. I'm going to put a poll out soon. The truth about Barack Obama or how to become a master communicator. Once that poll goes out on all different platforms, make sure y'all vote and let me know which one y'all want next. And that'll come out super ASAP. Wednesday, we have an interview. Is going to be great with Maggie, the substitute. And I got some really surprising interviews lined up later this month as well. Listen, y'all, thank y'all for your support. If you have not liked this video, Make sure you do. If you have not subscribed, please make sure you do. Go to the channel links. We got all the links you could imagine. Donations if you want to donate, the call-in forms if you like to come in. If you want to join the men's group, you still have time. It's Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every single week. And yeah, you name it. So thank y'all, genuinely. Again, welcome to Ask a Brother podcast. Again, I'm your host, Jeff St. James. And I'll see y'all when y'all see y'all. And Godson out. Peace.